Chapter 1086. Xiao Chen chose to ignore Tian Yu's constant calls of big sister and little brother. Sometimes this woman was just too lively. Xiao Chen didn't linger on this issue. He looked at Tian Yu and said, "The ancient withered vine's sap is so precious. Are you sure you don't want it?" "I already said that I don't want it. It's all yours," Tian Yu said impatiently. Tian Yu gave up on such a precious item just like that. Xiao Chen didn't say anything else. Judging from Tian Yu's reaction, she really wasn't interested in the ancient withered vine's sap. Then, Xiao Chen turned around and walked towards the dozen ancient withered vines. When Xiao Chen arrived before the ancient withered vines, he used the dustless sword to cut a hole in the middle of the ancient withered vine's trunk. Then, a wisp of thick green liquid flowed out from the trunk. Looking at the ancient withered vine's sap, Xiao Chen seemed to have guessed why Tian Yu didn't want it even if she was beaten to death. Tsk. How should he put it? It was indeed a little disgusting. Even a man like him frowned at the sight of it, not to mention a delicate young lady like Tian Yu. Furthermore, there was a pungent stench coming from the sap of the ancient withered wood vines. Xiao Chen recalled what Tian Yu had said earlier. If he wanted to use the sap of the ancient withered wood vines to train his body, he had to spread the sap evenly all over his body. Thinking of this, Xiao Chen immediately understood why Tian Yu gave up the sap of the ancient withered wood vines without hesitation. Moreover, Tian Yu wasn't a physique cultivator and didn't attach much importance to it. Since she didn't attach much importance to it, why would she tolerate such a disgusting thing? Therefore, Tian Yu chose to give it up without hesitation. However, to Xiao Chen, he could still tolerate the ancient withered vine's sap. Besides, it was a great help to his tempered battle body. Naturally, Xiao Chen wouldn't hesitate. Xiao Chen immediately took off his clothes, leaving his upper body bare. Then, he smeared the tree sap all over his body. As a pungent stench assaulted his nose, Xiao Chen suppressed the disgust in his heart and sat down cross-legged. At first, Xiao Chen was a little resistant to the stench emitted by the green sap, but soon, he felt as if his skin was being pricked by countless needles. The pain became more and more distinct, and it began to spread from his skin to his body. As the pain intensified, Xiao Chen naturally forgot about the pungent stench. He focused all his attention on enduring the pain caused by the tree sap as he sensed the changes in his body. Currently, Xiao Chen's tempered battle body was at the second level of the Jade Viscera realm. However, ever since he broke through to the Jade Viscera realm, he had never stopped cultivating his tempered battle body. Unfortunately, his progress was very slow. This was because the cultivation of the 100 refined physique was just too difficult. It wasn't something that could be achieved through hard work alone. It also required the cooperation of many treasures in order to make a breakthrough. Without a suitable treasure, the 100 refined physique naturally wouldn't make any significant progress. However, with the help of the ancient withered vine's sap, Xiao Chen could clearly feel that his 100 refined physique was constantly improving. This discovery made Xiao Chen overjoyed. It seemed that Tian Yu wasn't lying. The sap of the ancient withered vine was indeed a treasure for body tempering. The improvement of the 100 refined physique represented the strength of his physical body. Ever since the establishment of the sacred palace, Xiao Chen's originally overwhelming physical strength had slowly weakened as his opponents grew stronger. For example, Xiao Chen's current opponents, the other first chosens of the North Star boundary, weren't much weaker than Xiao Chen in terms of physical strength. At the very least, Mo Xie of the Night Ghost Pavilion was one such example. His physical strength wasn't inferior to Xiao Chen's at all. As such, there was no need to even mention the first chosen of the Liwang sect, Tong Huang. His physical strength was probably much stronger than Xiao Chen's. His huge advantage was slowly being eroded. Now, Xiao Chen could feel his physical strength increasing. How could Xiao Chen not be overjoyed? Xiao Chun endured the excruciating pain in his body. Not far away, Tianyu quietly opened her eyes and looked at Xiao Chun, who had already smeared the sap of the ancient withered wood vine all over his body. Her face revealed an extremely conflicted expression as she cutely stuck out her tongue and whispered, "I wouldn't smear such a disgusting thing on my body." Humph. With that, Tianyu closed her eyes again and began to recover her spiritual power. Tianyu didn't feel that it was a pity to give all the ancient withered vines sap to Xiao Chun. Speaking of which, Tianyu's personality was also the kind of carefree type. Coupled with the fact that her relationship with Xiao Chun had deepened over this period of time, Tianyu did not have the slightest bit of reluctance or regret in giving away these ancient withered vines sap. Xiao Chun cut open the ancient withered vine one after another and extracted the sap to refine his body. With the help of the ancient withered vine's sap, Xiao Chun's tempered battle body was also rapidly improving. 2 days later, when Xiao Chun finished refining the last ancient withered vine's sap, his tempered battle body had already reached the limit of the second layer, the Jade Organ's realm. He wasn't far from breaking through to the third layer. At the same time, with the improvement of the tempered battle body, Xiao Chun's physical strength would also be much stronger. He could not help but smile. He got up and threw a punch. A sonic boom was heard. Xiao Chun was very satisfied with his current physical strength. The only regret he had was that he was unable to break through to the third level of the celestial plane. However, he couldn't be too greedy. The breakthrough of the tempered battle body was extremely difficult. Being able to make such progress was already an unexpected gain. And just when Xiao Chun was secretly rejoicing, Tianyu, who had already recovered and changed into a clean set of clothes, appeared in front of Xiao Chun. She pinched her nose cutely and looked at Xiao Chun with disgust. "It stinks. Go wash up. I found a stream over there. Hurry up." In 2 days, Tianyu had obviously recovered. Hearing this, Xiao Chun also found that his body was indeed stinking at this time. The smell was exactly the same as the sap of the ancient withered vine. It was no wonder that Tianyu had a look of disgust. However, perhaps because he was in a good mood, Xiao Chun didn't care about Tianyu's disgust. Instead, he said with a smirk, "Stinky man, stinky man. How can you be called a stinky man if you don't stink? Pervert, hurry up and wash up. After you're done, we should get going." However, in the face of Xiao Chun's joke, Tianyu shouted angrily. At the same time, she pushed Xiao Chun with her hand, indicating that he should hurry up and wash up. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 1087. Xiao Chun was forcefully pushed to the side of the stream by Tianyu. He immediately jumped into the stream and washed off the dirt on his body. After a full 15 minutes, Xiao Chun confirmed that there was no smell on his body. He then took out a set of clean clothes and put them on. He then found Tianyu, who had been waiting for him not far away. Seeing that he had changed into a set of clean clothes in front of her, Tianyu moved closer and sniffed around. After confirming that there was no smell, she smiled with satisfaction. "All right, let's go. You are really particular. Isn't it just a little smell? What's the big deal? Moreover, we are not on vacation now. We are wandering between life and death. You still have the mood to worry about these things." Seeing that Tianyu was in a good mood and was leading the way, Xiao Chun said snappily, I am particular. So what? Moreover, who would like to have a smelly thing by their side all day? Tianyu was not to be outdone. She replied coquettishly, "Thing?" After hearing Tianyu's reply, Xiao Chun powerlessly retorted, "First of all, I am not a thing. Moreover, I am not as exaggerated as you say. What do you mean by smelly?" After experiencing this bitter battle, the relationship between Xiao Chun and Tianyu had obviously become much closer. In addition to their previous interactions, the two of them could be considered friends who could talk about anything. Therefore, they did not have any misgivings when talking to each other. They argued back and forth. They did not encounter any danger along the way. Soon, the two of them arrived at the center of the first heaven. There, a simple stone door stood. It was an open space surrounded by a dense forest. There was only one stone door in the entire space. It looked very strange. Xiao Chen and Tian Yu rushed through the dense forest and arrived in front of the stone door. Tian Yu frowned and said, "This should be the entrance to the second heaven." Just as Tian Yu's voice fell, Xiao Chen said softly, "Look there." As she spoke, Tian Yu followed Xiao Chen's gaze. Not far from the stone door, there was a skull without flesh. However, the unique mark of the heavenly race could still be clearly seen on its forehead. This was the skull of the heavenly race. It should be the holy sons of the 9 heavens who had entered the above heavens. They had indeed died here. They were probably killed by the ancient withered wood vine. A trace of sadness flashed across Tian Yu's eyes. Tian Yu walked to the skull and said, "Although I do not know who you are a senior of my 9 heavens. Since we have met, I shall bring you, of course." As she spoke, Tian Yu took out a cloth and wrapped the skull. Then, she kept it in her storage ring. Xiao Chen put away the skull and pushed the stone door open. He saw a fiery red light flickering within the stone door. He looked at each other and both of them walked into the stone door together. This stone door could be treated as a teleportation array. It was a teleportation array that connected the first and second heavens. Under the red light, Xiao Chen and Tian Yu quickly arrived at the second heavens. Compared to the first heavens, the second heavens could be said to be clear at a glance. From where Xiao Chen and Tian Yu stood, they could see that there was a similar stone door not far away. In other words, as long as Xiao Chen and Tian Yu could reach the stone door, they would be able to enter the third heavens. It seemed simple, but there was no joy on Xiao Chen and Tian Yu's faces. This was because, between them and the stone door, there was a stream of magma that was constantly emitting hot steam. The entire second heavens was a world of magma. The magma formed a circle around the stone door. In other words, no matter which direction they came from, they would have to pass through the magma to reach the stone door. Xiao Chen was naturally not worried about ordinary magma. However, the magma here was obviously very mysterious. At least, Xiao Chen could tell from the heat emitted by the magma that if he and Tian Yu went in, they would definitely die instantly. Logically speaking, at Xiao Chen and Tian Yu's level of cultivation, the heat and cold of the outside world would not affect them. However, at this moment, standing in the second heavens, Xiao Chen and Tian Yu actually felt that the heat was unbearable. Even breathing was a little difficult. One could imagine how strong the heat in the magma was. After observing for a moment, Tian Yu looked at Xiao Chen, not knowing what to do, and asked, "What should we do? There seems to be no other way except to force our way in. There is also a no-fly restriction here. But if we force our way in this magma..." Unknowingly, Tian Yu had become more and more accustomed to relying on Xiao Chen. She did not notice this, and Xiao Chen did not notice it either. It was as if it was a habit. Hearing Tian Yu's words, Xiao Chen said with a serious face, "We can only use talismans. Rely on the power of the talismans to force our way through the magma." Using the talismans to force our way through the magma. At this point, Xiao Chen paused, then turned to look at Tian Yu with a serious face and said word by word. "Remember, use the talismans to force your way through the magma. The most important thing is that the interval between each talisman must be flawless. If there is even the slightest mistake in the interval between the talismans, your life will be in danger." In the face of the magma, it was naturally impossible to rely on the power of one talisman to force their way through. They could only have a chance to succeed by constantly using up the talismans. However, this was where the danger lay. The interval between each talisman must be controlled well. Otherwise, once the previous talisman disappeared, The consequences would be unimaginable before the next talisman could be used. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Tian Yu also knew that this was not a joke. She nodded seriously as well. Then, the two of them took out a total of 40 talismans, 20 for each of them. Moreover, all of them had reached the saint level. Holding the talismans in their hands, they looked at each other and nodded at the same time. Then, they activated the talismans together and stepped into the magma. As soon as they entered the magma, the power of the talismans was rapidly eroded. The saint-level talismans, which were originally said to be powerful, could only last for less than 100 breaths in the magma. Xiao Chen had been carefully sensing the consumption of the talisman's power. Just as the protective shield formed by the talismans was about to break, he shouted softly, "Use the second talisman." Hearing this, Tian Yu did not dare to hesitate and immediately activated the second talisman. At the same time, Xiao Chen also used the second talisman. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 1088. The heat of the magma was something Xiao Chen had never seen before. The saint-grade defensive talisman could only last for less than 100 breaths. One could imagine that if one fell into the magma without a defensive talisman, even a saint-grade expert wouldn't be able to last long. Most importantly, there was a sky restriction in this world. Cultivators couldn't fly at all. In order to break this restriction, one's cultivation would have to be at the same level as the Heavenly Emperor. At the very least, one had to be at the Great Saint grade. One saint-level talisman after another was consumed at a crazy rate. Xiao Chen and Tian Yu were both very rich. Otherwise, with so many saint-level talismans, no one would be willing to use them like this. Each one would be a life-saving talisman for an ordinary person, and no one would be willing to use them like this. The magma didn't seem very wide. Xiao Chen and Tian Yu used a total of 38 saint-grade talismans before they reached the other side. Spitting out a mouthful of turbid air, Xiao Chen didn't care about his image, and sat on the ground. At the same time, Tian Yu did the same. However, Tian Yu's movements were bigger. Her whole body leaned on Xiao Chen. The two sat together. No, to be precise, it should be Tian Yu leaning on Xiao Chen. A relaxed smile appeared on their faces at the same time. Tian Yu even opened her mouth and teased. "It's really hot. I thought I was going to be cooked." "Don't worry. As the saying goes, good people don't live long, but scourges live for 1,000 years. You won't die so easily." Hearing this, Xiao Chen smiled. At first, these words sounded like comforting. However, after thinking about it carefully, Tian Yu was like an angry little lion. She bared her fangs and brandished her claws at Xiao Chen and said fiercely, "Who are you calling a scourge?" After successfully passing through the magma, both of them felt like they had survived a disaster. They relaxed and started to play around. There was no one around. If there were disciples of 9 heavens present at this time, their jaws would definitely drop because although Tian Yu was lively and active, she had never played around with anyone like this before. Not to mention, it was an outsider. Moreover, it was a man. Tian Yu didn't realize that the longer she stayed with Xiao Chen, the more unscrupulous she became. Sometimes, she even forgot her identity as the first saint of 9 heavens. She only felt comfortable with Xiao Chen. The two of them played around and came to the stone door of the second heaven. Xiao Chen pushed the stone door open with ease and the two of them stepped in. When Xiao Chen and Tian Yu appeared, they were surrounded by wind and snow. The snow was so strong that their vision. This wind and snow was like the magma of the second heaven. Because how many years had it been since they had felt this? It was a strange yet familiar feeling. Xiao Chen shivered and grumbled in annoyance. "Is there something wrong with your old master Tian Huang's brain? It's either fire or snow. One moment it's cold and the next it's hot. Is he trying to play us to death?" The second heaven was a world of magma. The third heaven was a world of snow. One hot and one cold. Xiao Chen felt like he was about to break down. Facing Xiao Chen's grumbling, Tian Yu replied while shivering, "What nonsense are you talking about? This is a test given to us by the old master. Stop grumbling. Let's hurry up and find the stone door." Searching in this world of snow and wind, the two of them were so cold that their lips were turning blue. They relied on pills to persevere. They tried using talismans, but they couldn't withstand the corrosion of the cold wind. They could only maintain their consciousness and recover their stamina through continuous consumption of pills. Unknowingly, Xiao Chen and Tian Yu were snuggled up together. Tian Yu was even curled up in Xiao Chen's embrace. Their posture was very ambiguous, but at this moment the two of them didn't care about it. At least they could keep warm by huddling together. Hugging Tian Yu with both hands, the two of them walked step by step. After 4 days, a stone door that was already frozen appeared in front of the two of them. Looking at the stone door, Tian Yu jumped up in joy and pulled Xiao Chen's hand. "Found it! Found it! Haha! We finally found it!" These few days, the two of them were indeed unbearably cold. Now that they finally found the stone door, they were naturally excited. But after the excitement, Tian Yu also realized that she had been holding Xiao Chen's hand all this time. Her face turned red. Then, like a frightened rabbit, she quickly let go. At the same time, she retreated quickly. Looking at Tian Yu's shy appearance, Xiao Chen was secretly amused. He had never seen Tian Yu like this before. But in order to avoid embarrassment, Xiao Chen didn't say anything. Xiao Chen smiled and changed the topic. "Okay, let's leave this damn place. It's so cold." Perhaps because of her shyness, Tian Yu didn't say anything after that. She didn't dare to get close to Xiao Chen again. She just followed behind Xiao Chen. The two of them came to the stone door together. Xiao Chen pushed the stone door open. Without any hesitation, the two of them directly stepped through the stone door. Although he didn't know what dangers were in the fourth heaven, in Xiao Chen's opinion, it was better than being frozen in the third heaven. The feeling of shivering in the cold wasn't a good feeling. They came all the way to the fourth heaven. Finally, it was no longer a world of ice and fire. It looked normal. It was a barren plain. Not even a blade of grass grew. Moreover, the stone door to the fifth heaven appeared in front of the two of them. There didn't seem to be any danger. There weren't any obstacles in front of them. It seemed that as long as they walked through the stone door, they would directly enter the fifth heaven. But just when the two of them were thinking about this, a loud roar sounded. Then, a huge monster drilled out from the ground. It was 1,000 feet tall. It looked like a mountain. Its pitch-black skin was like steel. It was a cold python. Its shape was like a whale. But its fins had turned into sharp claws. As it crawled on the ground, a terrifying pressure spread out. Judging from this pressure, this giant beast had obviously reached the Saint Realm. Facing this huge monster that suddenly appeared, Tian Yu cried out in alarm. "This is the ancient ferocious black whale, ancient ferocious beast." After hearing this, Xiao Chen was speechless. Xiao Chen didn't have the slightest idea of killing a Saint Realm ancient ferocious beast, because it was simply impossible. Even though Xiao Chen and Tian Yu were both the first saints, the possibility of killing a Saint Realm ancient ferocious beast was too low. Moreover, judging from the aura of this black whale, it was obvious that it hadn't just entered the Saint Realm. Instead, it had been immersed in the Saint Realm for many years. Its aura was vigorous and rich. It didn't seem like it had just broken through. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. End of chapter. Chapter 1089. A black whale was an ancient ominous beast that had already broken through the Sage Realm. It wasn't something that Xiao Chen and Tian Yu could contend against. Both of them were the first holy sons of the Northern Star boundary. However, they still didn't have a chance of winning. Tian Yu was shocked by this black whale. However, Xiao Chen had seen some clues. "So," he asked, "is this black whale a slave beast?" A slave beast was a demon beast that had been deprived of its intelligence. This black whale was like this. It was huge and terrifying. However, its pair of moon-like eyes seemed empty and lifeless. Moreover, this black whale couldn't transform into a human form after reaching the sage realm. Moreover, it couldn't speak human language. There was only one explanation for this. It had been deprived of its intelligence, and had become a slave beast. Xiao Chen suddenly had a plan in his mind. It was very dangerous. However, it was much better than fighting this black whale to the death. Xiao Chen whispered in Tian Yu's ear. Tian Yu's complexion changed when she heard Xiao Chen's plan. Then, she repeatedly shook her head and said, "No, it's too dangerous. This black whale is very powerful. Even a sage expert of the sage great perfection realm wouldn't be able to defeat it. How can you stall it alone?" Xiao Chen's plan was very simple. He would stall this black whale. Tian Yu would find an opportunity to open the stone door. Then, both of them would go directly to the 6th layer of heaven. It seemed like a good plan. However, Tian Yu firmly disagreed with it. Both of them couldn't compete with this black whale even if they joined forces. Not to mention that Xiao Chen was alone. It was too dangerous. Tian Yu disagreed. Xiao Chen wasn't in the mood to comfort her at this time. He couldn't care too much. Xiao Chen suddenly shouted angrily, "You have to do it even if you can't. This is the best way. It's settled. I will stall it. You open the stone door as soon as possible." This was the first time Xiao Chen had yelled at Tian Yu in such a manner. As the number 1 holy maiden of the 9 heavens, it was also the first time Tian Yu had been yelled at in such a manner. However, at that moment, Tian Yu had apparently forgotten to be angry. She was stunned by Xiao Chen's angry roar. It was at that moment that Xiao Chen stepped forward with the dustless sword in his hand and spoke to He Jing, who was still yelling at him. "Open the stone door as soon as possible. I can't escape from him for long." Without waiting for Tian Yu to reply, Xiao Chen moved and took the initiative to attack the black whale. Seeing Xiao Chen's action, Tian Yu suddenly raised her head. Her eyes were slightly red and there were still traces of tears at the corners of her eyes. She didn't agree with Xiao Chen's plan, but there was nothing she could do now. Xiao Chen had already rushed towards the black whale, so all she could do was open the stone door as soon as possible. "You are obviously not as strong as me. Why are you showing off? How dare you yell at me? Humph." Looking at Xiao Chen's back, Tian Yu snorted in grievance. She didn't dare to delay any longer. She went around the black whale and rushed towards the stone door. Xiao Chen and Tian Yu went forward side by side. At the same time, Xiao Chen had already soared into the sky and slashed out fiercely with the Jiuluo sword Qi. Xiao Chen went all out from the start. Facing the ancient ferocious black whale, it was impossible for him to hold back. However, just as Xiao Chen made his move, the black whale flew into a rage. It turned its head and let out a deafening roar at Xiao Chen. The terrifying aura shattered the Jiuluo sword Qi. With just a roar, it shattered Xiao Chen's sacred-level martial skill, the Jiuluo sword Qi. This was the power of the ancient ferocious black whale. At the same time, the black whale stared at Xiao Chen with its big moon-like eyes. Its eyes were full of murderous intent and anger. Perhaps in the eyes of the black whale, Xiao Chen was just an ant that it could trample to death at any time. However, such an ant actually dared to take the initiative to attack it. He was simply courting death. Although the black whale didn't have any spiritual intelligence, it still felt that its dignity was being challenged by an ant. This had nothing to do with spiritual intelligence. It was completely instinctive. Furious, the black whale's huge claw that covered the sky slammed down fiercely. The sky seemed to be covered in an instant. Seeing this, Xiao Chen didn't dare to hesitate. He immediately performed the stampede of the tiger and narrowly avoided the attack of the black whale. The huge claw landed on the ground. Smoke and dust rose and the ground shook. This caused Tian Yu, who was rushing towards the stone door, to stagger and almost fall to the ground. At this time, Xiao Chen was complaining in his heart. At most, he would have 30 breaths. This was Xiao Chen's estimation. Facing the ancient ferocious black whale, he could only delay it for 30 breaths. If Tianyu couldn't reach the stone door and open it within 30 breaths, the situation would become very dangerous. No one knew what Xiao Chen was thinking. The black whale didn't succeed in its attack. Once again, it let out a long roar and attacked Xiao Chen. On the other hand, Xiao Chen naturally didn't dare to take the attack of the black whale head-on. He could only control it by dodging and attacking from time to distract the black whale. He kept dodging, but even so, it was still very dangerous. Just as Xiao Chen and the black whale were entangled, 20 breaths passed in the blink of an eye. At this time, Tianyu finally arrived at the stone door. Without any hesitation, she pushed the stone door open. She then turned to Xiao Chen and shouted, "The stone door is open. Quick!" Hearing Tianyu's roar, Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with joy. Without any hesitation, he slashed out with his sword. The sword tip slashed towards the black whale. Xiao Chen then turned around and flew towards the stone door. Xiao Chen's attack naturally didn't cause any damage to the black whale. Just as Xiao Chen rushed towards the stone door, the black whale turned around and slammed its claw down. Seeing that the giant claw was getting closer and closer, Xiao Chen had already increased his speed to the maximum. Tianyu, who was waiting at the stone door, shouted anxiously, "Be careful!" In the end, he still couldn't escape the attack of the black whale. The giant claw slammed onto Xiao Chen's back. In an instant, Xiao Chen's entire back was badly mutilated. However, because of the strength of the claw, Xiao Chen was accidentally slammed into the stone door. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his body shot towards the stone door like a cannonball. In the end, Xiao Chen hugged Tianyu, who was waiting in front of the stone door, and the two of them rushed into the stone door together. Although it was said that they rushed into the stone door, it was more accurate to say that they crawled in after being slapped by the black whale. Because of such a coincidence, Xiao Chen and Tianyu's lives were saved. However, Xiao Chen's current situation wasn't too good. After being hit by the claw, Xiao Chen was definitely seriously injured. On the other hand, when the black whale saw that the two ants had escaped from under its nose, it roared angrily. In such a roar, the heavens and earth seemed to have lost their color. However, no matter how it roared, Xiao Chen and Tianyu still managed to escape. Please add it to your collection, monthly vote, recommend it. End of chapter. Chapter 1090. The black whale roared angrily, but Xiao Chen and Tianyu could no longer hear it. At the same time, the stone door slowly closed. After a long while, the black whale vented its anger and sank into the ground again. The whole world became silent again. After successfully escaping from death and entering the fifth heaven, Xiao Chen's injuries were very serious. After taking a direct hit from the black whale, it was fortunate that Xiao Chen's physical strength was strong. If it was someone else, they would have died on the spot. If that blow had hit Tianyu, she would not have just been seriously injured. If she had not died, she would have been crippled. After all, although Tianyu was strong, in terms of defense and physical strength, she was far inferior to Xiao Chen. Tianyu did not care about the propriety between men and women. She hugged Xiao Chen and let his head rest on her legs. She called out with a worried face, "Xiao Chen, hey, wake up." Xiao Chen's eyes were slightly closed. Tianyu was so anxious that she kept shaking Xiao Chen's body, trying to wake him up. Amidst Tianyu's sobbing shouts and continuous shaking, Xiao Chen finally opened his eyes slowly. A forced smile appeared on his face as he spoke. "Hey, stop shaking me. If you continue to shake me, I will really faint." In the face of Tianyu's worry and anxious appearance, Xiao Chen was touched. Hence, he made a rare joke to tease Tianyu. However, in the face of Xiao Chen's joke, Tianyu rolled her eyes and said snappily, You still have the mood to joke at a time like this? As she spoke, Tian Yu took out an elixir from her storage ring and personally fed it to Xiao Chen. As soon as the elixir entered Xiao Chen's stomach, a pure medicinal power spread throughout his body. The elixir that Tian Yu took out was not an ordinary elixir. It was a healing elixir that had reached the saint level and was very valuable. With the help of this pill, Xiao Chen's complexion gradually relaxed, and a trace of color slowly returned to his face. He did not recklessly attempt the fifth heaven. Xiao Chen's current condition was not good and he was seriously injured. Under such circumstances, it would be extremely irrational to act rashly. After finding a relatively safe place, Xiao Chen began to heal himself while Tianyue stayed close to him to protect and take care of Xiao Chen. Perhaps even Tianyu herself had never thought that one day she would take care of a person like this. Moreover, it was a man. Tianyu's attentiveness was like that of a virtuous wife. Xiao Chen was also happy to enjoy this. Thinking about it, in the entire Northern Star realm, other than himself, who else could make the first saintess of the 9 heavens, Tianyu, take care of him so gently? Moreover, she never left his side. Under Tianyu's careful care, Xiao Chen's body rapidly recovered. At the same time, in the sacred palace of the distant heavenly Chen continent, the 9 heavens saint, the 2 saints sent by the 9 heavens saint, and Saint Ziyu finally arrived. The 3 of them represented the 9 heavens saint to confirm the alliance. Of course, the specific negotiations would definitely require the quasi-saints from both sides to meet in person. However, now was not the time because Chun Ling and Long Qing had not sent back any news. They could only wait for the Supreme God sect and Li Wang sect to make a decision before the quasi-saints from both sides could meet. Therefore, Xiao Xing and the others did not show up when Ziyu and the others arrived. They only let the 9 heavens saint and the others be in charge of receiving them and serving them with good food and drinks while waiting for news from the Supreme God sect and Li Wang sect. They did not place much importance on them, but they did not look down on them either. However, with the return of the 9 heavens saint and the others, Qin Shuru and the others learned that Xiao Chen had entered the above heavens saint. At this moment, the 9 heavens saint personally came to Xiao Chen's cave residence and told the 3 women the truth about the 9 heavens palace. Hearing this, the 3 women's expressions changed slightly. Qin Shuru said coldly, "Why didn't you stop him? Don't you know how dangerous the above heavens saint is?" Perhaps because of the worry in his heart, Qin Shuru's attitude became somewhat cold. Fortunately, the 9 heavens saint did not care about this and only shook his head with a bitter smile. Don't you know Chun Er's personality? Who can persuade him when he has decided on something? The 9 heavens saint's words were not false. Hearing this, 100 Flower Fairy comforted, "Shuru, you can't blame the saint for this. It's not like you don't know our husband's temper." But that day in the heavens," Qin Shuero said worriedly. But that day in the heavens, the above heavens saint was too dangerous. Moreover, Xiao Chen did not say anything and directly entered the above heavens saint. How could Qin Shuru and the others not be worried? However, Xiao Chen had already entered the above heavens saint. Even if the 3 women were worried, there was nothing they could do. The only thing they could do was pray that Xiao Chen would return safely. They did not tell Bai Ruiyue and Xiao Qing about this matter. The 3 women were afraid that the 2 elders would be worried, so they chose to hide it. Unaware that the 3 women were currently worried about him, Xiao Chen recuperated in the above heavens saint for a few days. His injuries were completely healed, and the 2 of them continued to advance. They had already arrived at the 5th layer of heaven. With the cooperation of Xiao Chen and Tianyu, the 2 of them were able to break through like a hot knife through butter. Half a month later, the 2 of them finally arrived at the stone gate of the 8th layer of heaven. As long as they passed this gate, they would be able to enter the 9th layer of heaven. This was the final test of the above heavens saint. Just one more step. Looking at the stone gate of the 8th layer of heaven, Xiao Chen said softly. Yes, just one more step. Tian Yu smiled and nodded in agreement. Then, Xiao Chen pushed open the stone gate, and the two of them strode in. Xiao Chen had no idea what the test of the 9th layer of heaven was. After a moment of dizziness, Xiao Chen arrived at the final 9th layer of heaven. However, what surprised him was that the 9th layer of heaven was actually a city. That's right, it was a city. And Xiao Chen was currently in this city. There were people coming and going, and the cries of various vendors gave off an extremely lively and prosperous feeling. This is... After looking around, Xiao Chen discovered that this city was no different from an ordinary city. Moreover, there were people of various races in the city. Could it be that there are still people living in the above heaven saint? If this city was real, it meant that the people in the city had been living in the above heaven saint for a long time. At the very least, they had existed since ancient times. He didn't expect that the 9th layer of heaven would actually be like this. After some doubts, Xiao Chen quickly discovered that something was amiss. And this was because of his own condition. My cultivation has disappeared? Inadvertently, Xiao Chen discovered that his cultivation had actually disappeared completely. There wasn't even a trace of spiritual energy in his body. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. End of chapter. Chapter 1091. Xiao Chen could not feel any trace of spiritual energy. At this moment, he had become an ordinary person. Furthermore, Tian Yu was nowhere to be found. Xiao Chen stood alone on the street as people came and went on both sides of him. He did not know what the test of the 9th heaven was. However, just as Xiao Chen was in a daze, an extremely untimely sneer suddenly sounded from behind him. Oh? You must be new. Do you know the rules of 9 Heaven City? Upon hearing the voice, Xiao Chen turned around and saw 5 burly and ferocious-looking men looking at him with sneers on their faces. These 5 people were ordinary people without any cultivation. If it were any other time, Xiao Chen could easily crush them with a finger. However, it was a pity that Xiao Chen had become an ordinary person without any cultivation. Ordinary people against ordinary people, and the other party had 5 burly men. Xiao Chen obviously did not have any advantage. However, Xiao Chen did not panic. He remembered that when he was young, Xiao Chen was only a child with the height of a dog and did not have any cultivation. However, Xiao Chen had never been afraid of anyone in Lingshan City. He was even more familiar with leading the Xiao family disciples to fight. To put it bluntly, although Xiao Chen was a disciple of a large family, his father, Xiao Chen, could be said to have been raised freely by his father, Xiao Qing. Because of this, Xiao Chen had experienced many things and suffered a lot. It was as if he had returned to the time when he was young and fighting in Lingshan City. Xiao Chen could vaguely guess the test of the 9th heaven. The mundane world of the marketplace. Xiao Chen murmured softly with an evil smile on his face. Then, he looked at the 5 burly men and said with a smile, "You're new. So what?" Having already guessed the test of the 9th layer of heaven, Xiao Chen felt a little excited. Having been in the world of warriors for so long, it was a different feeling to suddenly return to the mundane world of the common people. Seeing that Xiao Chen was not afraid at all, the leader of the 5 men laughed coldly. "Oh, you're arrogant. Do you know the rules of 9 Heaven City? Newcomers have to follow us to the City Lord Mansion and be a slave for a year. Only then will you have the right to live in 9 Heaven City. Be a slave for a year in the City Lord Mansion?" Hearing this, Xiao Chen smiled and shook his head. "I don't have the habit of working hard. Are you kidding me? Be a slave? Unless the sun rises from the west." Seeing that Xiao Chen chose to reject without hesitation, a cold light flashed in the leader's eyes. He said fiercely, "We gave you face, but you don't want it. Brothers, let's teach this kid the rules of 9 Heaven City." Following the leader's words, the 4 men behind him sneered and walked towards Xiao Chen. Seeing this, Xiao Chen did not wait for his death. Instead, he chose to strike first to gain the upper hand. Although he had lost his cultivation, Xiao Chen was no stranger to fighting. He was not called the little tyrant of Lingshan City for nothing. Xiao Chen was well aware of what he needed to pay attention to in a street brawl between mortals. Therefore, he ignored the 4 people who were approaching him and locked his gaze on the leader of the group. To shoot a man, shoot the horse first. To capture the bandits, capture the leader first. When fighting in the marketplace, when the enemy was strong and you were weak, you shouldn't think about fighting a group of people alone because it was simply unrealistic. The best way was to focus on the leader and beat him up. As long as the leader was beaten down, the rest of the matter would be relatively simple. With a kick, the person closest to Xiao Chen was caught off guard. Xiao Chen viciously kicked him on the leg. The intense pain caused the person to grit his teeth and cry out, "Ouch, F***ck." After succeeding in his attack, Xiao Chen did not stop. Taking advantage of the fact that the other 3 were extremely stunned, he rushed towards the leader. Seeing that Xiao Chen actually dared to take the initiative to rush towards him, the leader shouted angrily, "Kid, you're really courting death." As he spoke, he raised his fist and met Xiao Chen's attack. However, Xiao Chen's fighting experience was obviously not comparable to these people. He skillfully dodged the man's fist and then threw out a punch, hitting the leader's abdomen. After spitting out a mouthful of blood, Xiao Chen kicked the man's right knee. Under the pain, the man directly knelt on the ground on one knee. After all, the 2 consecutive attacks were swift and extremely ruthless. However, this was not the end. Taking advantage of the situation, Xiao Chen circled behind the leader and tightly strangled his neck with both hands. He tried his best to suppress him and prevent him from standing up. With his neck tightly strangled, breathing became extremely difficult. Soon, the leader's face turned red. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Just after the leader was restrained by Xiao Chen, the other 4 people came back to their senses. Seeing that their eyes were fixed on him again, Xiao Chen said with a sinister smile on his face, "Don't move or I'll break his neck." "How dare you?" Hearing Xiao Chen's words, the 4 people shouted angrily. "You'll know if I dare or not after you try." Hearing this, Xiao Chen was unmoved and smiled. At the same time, he increased the strength of his hand. At this time, he had already captured the leader. Now that he had the initiative, there was no reason for him not to dare. He didn't expect things to develop into this situation. Since the leader was captured, the remaining 4 people naturally didn't dare to act rashly. Seeing that the 4 people didn't dare to make any more moves, Xiao Chen smiled coldly. To catch bandits, first catch the leader. This was indeed an immutable truth. Whether it was in the world of warriors or in the marketplace, it was extremely useful. Seeing that the 4 people didn't dare to make any moves, Xiao Chen dodged a dagger from one of them and used the dagger to restrain the leader. Then, he began to interrogate him. It was indeed a strange scene for one person to interrogate 5 burly men. However, Xiao Chen didn't care about this. Xiao Chen felt that this 9-heaven city was a little strange. The people here were ordinary people without any cultivation. It was as though they couldn't cultivate in this place. Due to the previous fight, the surroundings were filled with people. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Xiao Chen couldn't say anything. Soon, he got the few people to bring him to a quiet place. With the leader firmly under his control, Xiao Chen was led to an alley by the other 4. There were no outsiders there, so Xiao Chen completely let go of his guard and asked the 4 in a deep voice, "Are all of you born and raised in 9-heaven city since young?" "Yes." Facing Xiao Chen's question, the 4 people nodded and replied without hesitation. "Are there many newcomers in 9-heaven city?" Xiao Chen continued to ask. "Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." End of chapter. Chapter 1092. Previously, Xiao Chen had heard from these people that the newcomers were going to be slaves in the city lord's mansion for a year. Therefore, he was very curious about this. Furthermore, Xiao Chen also wanted to find out the secret of the ninth heaven through these people. His cultivation base had mysteriously disappeared and then reappeared in this Nine Heavens city. He was still unsure of what the test in Nine Heavens city was and how he could pass it. Therefore, Xiao Chen was in urgent need of useful information. Under Xiao Chen's interrogation, these people spilled everything they knew to Xiao Chen. Needless to say, Xiao Chen really did obtain some useful information from these people. According to these people, the so-called newcomers were told to them by the city lord's mansion. They could be considered as the guards of Nine Heavens City. Today, the steward of the city lord's mansion told them where a newcomer had entered Nine Heavens City. This newcomer was Xiao Chen and asked the five of them to bring Xiao Chen back. In other words, these five people actually didn't know how Xiao Chen had entered, but the city lord's mansion knew. He had just entered Nine Heavens City and the city lord's mansion already knew. It seemed like there was a secret in the city lord's mansion. Or rather, the city lord's mansion should be related to the test of the ninth heaven. It might even be related to the final emperor's record. In order to understand the situation, he had to make a trip to the city lord's mansion. Fortunately, although he didn't have any cultivation, the people in Nine Heavens City were all ordinary people. There wasn't a single cultivator. Since they were all ordinary people without cultivation, the pressure in Xiao Chen's heart lessened. However, if he wanted to go to the city lord's mansion, he had to plan carefully. After all, he didn't have the strength to fight against 10 people. Xiao Chen asked some more questions about the city lord's mansion. However, these people didn't know much about the city lord's mansion. What surprised Xiao Chen was that the leader actually had a map of the city lord's mansion. This was definitely good news for Xiao Chen. With the map, it would be more convenient and safer to move around. Without any hesitation, Xiao Chen kept the map. Finally, he asked a few people about Tianyu. Since the city lord knew about his arrival, they would definitely know about Tianyu's arrival. Moreover, based on the current situation, Tianyu should be in the same situation as him. Her cultivation should have disappeared. Thinking of this, Xiao Chen couldn't help but worry. Normally, Xiao Chen would not be worried. But now it was different. Without cultivation, Tianyue was just an ordinary woman. In addition, Xiao Chen knew very well that Tianyue had never experienced any setbacks since she was a child. She didn't want herself to be a wily old fox who had mingled in the streets since she was a child. Without her cultivation, Tianyue was just an inexperienced little girl in the mortal world. He was very clear that Tianyu did not have the ability to mingle in the marketplace at all. Therefore, Xiao Chen's most important goal now was not to go to the city lord's mansion, but to find Tianyu. He did not want anything to happen to Tianyu. However, Xiao Chen did not manage to find out any information about Tianyu from the 5 people. The 5 of them only knew about Xiao Chen's existence and did not know about Tianyu's existence. Feeling rather exasperated, Xiao Chen knocked all 5 of them out and left on his own. It was not time to go to the city lord's mansion yet. Let's find Tianyu first. However, in this vast sea of people, and he was not familiar with the Nine Heavens City, where could he find her? As he walked, he thought to himself. After a while, Xiao Chen had a flash of inspiration. He slapped his forehead and said excitedly, "How stupid! Didn't the 5 of them say that they would capture all the newcomers and bring them to the city lord's mansion? If Tianyu is captured, she will definitely be brought to the city lord's mansion. I only need to go to the city lord's mansion and I will be able to find her." He would definitely be able to find Tianyu if he went to the city lord's mansion. This was much better than wandering around the city. Thinking of this, Xiao Chen turned around and went straight to the city lord's mansion. As the manager of the Nine Heavens City, It was not difficult to find the city lord's mansion. When Xiao Qin went straight to the city lord's mansion, Tian Yu had already been captured and brought to the city lord's mansion. In the main hall, Tian Yu fell to the ground with a horrified expression. In front of her, a middle-aged man and a young man were sitting in the middle. The middle-aged man looked calm. However, the young man had a perverted smile on his face. The way he looked at Tian Yu was extremely invasive. It was as though he wanted to see through Tian Yu. Beautiful. She is really beautiful. Father, I want this girl. After staring at Tian Yu for a while, the young man finally looked at the middle-aged man beside him and said. The middle-aged man was the city lord of the Nine Heavens City, and the young man was his only son. Hearing the young man's words, the middle-aged man did not reject. He nodded his head and said, "Since you like them, I will give them to you." "Thank you, father." Hearing this, the young man stood up excitedly and bowed. Hearing the conversation between the father and son, Tian Yu was completely stunned. Just as Xiao Qin had thought, Tian Yu did not have the ability or means to survive in the marketplace. Ever since she was young, Tian Yu had either stayed in her family or lived in Nine Heavens. She had never come into contact with the messy, scheming world of the city. Speaking of the mundane world, many people actually misunderstood it. They always thought that the world of cultivators was the most chaotic. Little did they know that compared to the mundane world of the mundane world, the world of cultivators was actually considered a pure land. The world of cultivators was cruel. This was true. However, it was not chaotic. It was not like the marketplace where crooks and honest people were mixed together. In addition to being cruel, it was also extremely chaotic. There were all kinds of tricks that were used. As an ordinary person, if they wanted to live well in the marketplace, it was definitely a great knowledge. They also needed to have sufficient ability to do so. It was a pity that as the number one saintess of the Nine Heavens, Tian Yu had never come into contact with these things since young. In the past, he had thought that the mundane world was far away from him and he would probably never cross paths with them. But who would have thought that in this above heavens, Tian Yu would actually become a member of the mundane world? Furthermore, her cultivation had mysteriously disappeared, turning her into an ordinary person from head to toe. Looking at the young man walking toward her excitedly, Tian Yu instinctively retreated. She couldn't help but think to herself, "Xiao Qin, where are you? Where are you?" In the most helpless moment of her life, Tian Yu actually thought of Xiao Qin. At the same time, the young man came to Tian Yu, squatted down, and ran his finger across Tian Yu's cheek. He said with a smile, "Beauty, don't be afraid. I am very gentle. Besides, if you follow me, I guarantee that you will get whatever you want in the Nine Heavens City. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." End of chapter. Chapter 1093. Tian Yu felt a wave of disgust when she heard the young man's words. She slapped the young man's arm away and said fiercely, "You are not worthy." Not giving any face at all. Facing Tian Yu's chastity, the young man wasn't annoyed. Instead, he laughed coldly and said, "Haha, what a wild horse. Interesting. Men, bring her to my room. I will train her well tonight." "Yes." Hearing the young man's order, the two guards outside the door responded respectfully. They then forcefully brought Tian Yu away. Tian Yu's heart was in a mess when she was manipulated by a group of ordinary people who had no cultivation and she was powerless to resist. It was like a person who suddenly lost both of her legs. It was the same feeling. If it was any other time, Tian Yu could flatten Nine Heavens City with a single slap. However, she did not have the ability to do so now. After Tian Yu was beaten away, only the Nine Heavens City governor and his son were left in the hall. The young man looked at his father and the smile on his face quickly disappeared. It was replaced by a solemn expression. "Father, these two are newcomers. Could it be that they are related to the ancestors? It should be so. So be careful. Don't forget the ancestors' advice. Hearing this, the Nine Heavens city governor nodded seriously. The ancestors' advice? If Xiao Chen was present and heard what the two said, he would have been shocked. It seemed that the city lord's residence had something to do with the test of the ninth layer of heaven, and the relationship was not small. In other words, the city lord's residence was the key to passing the ninth layer of heaven. However, it was a pity that Xiao Chen was not present at the moment. Hence, he had no way of knowing. Time passed slowly and the night gradually fell. There were fewer and fewer people on the street. Everyone had returned to their homes to rest. As ordinary people, they could not be like cultivators who could go without sleep. On the street outside the city governor's mansion, there was no one to be seen. Only a few guards at the door were still standing straight. However, just as the night sky gradually darkened, a black shadow rushed out from the corner of a house not far from the courtyard wall of the city governor's mansion. After which, it agilely stepped on the courtyard wall and directly jumped into the courtyard. This black shadow was none other than Xiao Chen. He had been waiting here since the day, waiting for night to fall. Now that it was almost time, Xiao Chen naturally began to sneak into the city lord's mansion secretly. After successfully entering the city lord's mansion, Xiao Chen hid behind a large tree and observed the situation of the guards in the city lord's mansion. The main purpose of this trip was to rescue Tianyu. As for the secrets of the city lord's mansion, there was no hurry. After rescuing Tianyu, there would be plenty of time to investigate. Xiao Chen stood where he was without making a sound, almost blending into the night. After careful observation, Xiao Chen found that the security in the city lord's residence was very tight. There were more than 10 teams of guards in charge of patrolling. Each team had 5 people. As a result, Xiao Chen's plan to take action was cut off. After all, there were 5 people. Xiao Chen was not confident that he could kill them silently. After all, Xiao Chen was also an ordinary person without any cultivation. Since he was an ordinary person, he could only think like an ordinary person. If he still regarded himself as a warrior, he would be digging his own grave. He had to face reality. Therefore, Xiao Chen did not act rashly. He had been patiently waiting for an opportunity. Teams of patrolling guards walked past Xiao Chen, but they did not notice Xiao Chen. Just as Xiao Chen was secretly anxious, Xiao Chen suddenly saw a young man in servant's clothes walking towards him. There was only one person. Seeing this servant, Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with joy. He thought to himself, "Here's my chance." He quietly approached the servant. Just as the servant was about to pass by the big tree where Xiao Chen was hiding, Xiao Chen directly rushed out. Then, before the servant had any time to react, Xiao Chen covered his mouth and forcibly dragged him back behind the big tree. He did not expect that a thief would appear in the heavily guarded city lord mansion. Being captured by Xiao Chen, the servant's eyes were round and full of horror. "I'm asking you. If you dare to scream, I'll kill you. Do you understand?" Xiao Chen stared at the servant and said in a low voice. His voice was full of killing intent. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, the servant nodded repeatedly. Then, Xiao Chen began to ask questions. It was mainly about Tianyu. Was there a young girl who was captured and brought back to the city lord mansion today? Xiao Chen asked. Yes. Hearing this, the servant hesitated for a moment, but still nodded and replied. Sure enough, after hearing the servant's answer, Xiao Chen was delighted. Then, he continued to ask, "Where is this woman now?" In the young master's room. The servant replied. In the young master's room? Hearing this, the joy that surged in Xiao Chen's heart was extinguished quickly and was replaced by a strong killing intent. For some unknown reason, Xiao Chen couldn't help but be filled with killing intent when he heard that Tianyu might have been defiled by the so-called young master. After asking for the location of the young master's room, Xiao Chen mercilessly broke the servant's neck. Then, he quickly changed into the servant's clothes and swaggered out. Disguised as a servant of the city lord mansion, Xiao Chen met several teams of patrolling guards along the way. However, seeing Xiao Chen's calm expression and the identity token hanging on his waist, the guards didn't think much of it. Xiao Chen quickly rushed to the young master's room. Just as Xiao Chen rushed over, Tian Yu was holding a pair of scissors and was forced to the corner of the room. In front of Tian Yu, the young man in the daytime was forcing her step by step with a lecherous smile and spoke with disdain. "Oh, what's wrong? You want to commit suicide? Kill yourself if you dare. To tell you the truth, this young master has seen plenty of women like you. Each and every one of them pretended to be chaste and virtuous, but in the end, didn't they crawl into bed obediently? So, stop acting in front of this young master. Kill yourself if you dare." Apparently, he didn't believe that Tian Yu would really kill herself. As soon as the young man finished his words, a glint of determination flashed in Tian Yu's eyes. "Even if I die, I won't let an ant like you defile me. My body will only be." Tian Yu raised the scissors in her hand and stabbed it into her heart without hesitation. Seeing that Tian Yu actually dared to commit suicide, the young man's expression changed drastically. At this moment, the door was kicked open with a bang. Then, Xiao Chen, who was dressed in servant's clothes, strode in. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. End of chapter. Chapter 1094. As soon as Xiao Chen entered the room, he saw Tian Yu preparing to commit suicide. In a moment of desperation, Xiao Chen couldn't care less and shouted loudly, "Tian Yu!" The familiar voice made Tian Yu pause in her actions. She turned her head, and when she saw Xiao Chen's familiar face appear in front of her, Tian Yu finally couldn't hold on any longer. Tears instantly poured down her face as she cried out, "Xiao Chen, save me!" As the first saint of 9 heavens, this was the first time Xiao Chen saw Tian Yu crying so sadly. Although Tian Yu had almost cried because of him, it was only a near cry. Now, however, tears kept falling from her eyes. Xiao Chen's heart ached when he saw Tian Yu in such a state. However, now wasn't the time to talk about this. Xiao Chen immediately turned to look at the young man. At the same time, the young man looked at Xiao Chen fiercely and asked, "Are you the other newcomer?" Naturally, the young man did not get a reply, because Xiao Chen had already made his move when the young man opened his mouth to speak. He quickly stepped forward and kicked the young man in the groin with all his might. The young man's face instantly turned black and he couldn't help but kneel down. Xiao Chen seized the opportunity and tore the tablecloth beside him into pieces. Then, he tied the young man up tightly and stuffed a piece of cloth into the young man's mouth. After doing all this, Xiao Chen heaved a sigh of relief and carefully closed the door. Only then did he have the time to look at Tian Yu. The young man had been too careless tonight. He thought he could spend the night with Tian Yu, so he sent the surrounding guards away. He didn't have the habit of being eavesdropped on by others. Because of the young man's action, the outside world didn't know what was happening in the room at all. Xiao Chen easily subdued the young man. Although he didn't have any cultivation, it was easy for him to take down a young man who had been hollowed out by wine and women. After Xiao Chen secretly relaxed, Tian Yu suddenly threw herself into Xiao Chen's arms and said with a sobbing tone, "Xiao Chen, I thought I would never see you again. Why are you only here now? I almost, her words were full of grievance. Xiao Chen did not expect that Tian Yu, the #1 holy maiden of the 9 heavens, would be in such a state. However, seeing Tian Yu crying so sadly, Xiao Chen still comforted her. All right, it's fine. I'm here now." After some consolation, Tian Yu gradually calmed down. Subsequently, the two of them sat down on a chair. Tian Yu's face was still a little pale as she sat beside Xiao Chen. However, there was not much panic in her eyes and she had calmed down. Tian Yu was also a little curious about the 9th heaven. She looked at Xiao Chen and asked, "Xiao Chen, what do you think the 9th heaven means? How can we pass it? Besides, we don't have any cultivation anymore. I think the 9-heaven city itself is a test of the 9th heaven. If we want to pass the 9th heaven, the secret should be in the city lord's mansion. Hearing this, Xiao Chen told Tianyu his guess. With Xiao Chen beside her, Tianyu quickly relaxed. Perhaps even she didn't notice that she had gotten used to relying on Xiao Chen. The two of them chatted for a while. Then, Xiao Chen turned his gaze to the young man and said with a cold smile, "This person is the city lord's son?" Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Tianyu replied fiercely, "That's right. They are a pair of dog father and son." After learning the identity of the young man from Tianyu, Xiao Chen's smile became even colder. "So you are the city lord's son. If that's the case, you should know a lot of things. For example, the secrets of the 9-heaven city." Hearing this and looking at the cold smile on Xiao Chen's face, the young man's heart trembled. He felt as if he was a wolf looking at a sheep. He was the sheep, and Xiao Chen was the pack of hungry wolves that were emitting green light from both sides. As if he was scared stiff, the young man didn't respond for a long time. Seeing this, Xiao Chen didn't mind and continued. "I have a few questions. Now I will ask and you will answer. Is that okay?" There was still no response. The young man was still in a daze. Seeing this, Xiao Chen sighed helplessly. He turned around and snatched the scissors from Tianyu's hand. He got up and slowly walked to the young man and squatted down. "I wanted to have a good talk with you. However, it seems like you won't speak unless I use some tricks." Saying this, Xiao Chen turned to Tianyu and said, "If you feel disgusted, you can turn your head away." After saying this, Xiao Chen didn't hesitate anymore. He directly pierced the scissors into the young man's thigh. Blood spurted out instantly. The young man's body couldn't help but tremble from the intense pain. His mouth was gagged, and the young man could only make muffled sounds. It was definitely a cruel interrogation. Under Xiao Chen's various tricks, the young man was soon left with only one breath. His clothes were already stained red with blood. After spending so much effort, Xiao Chen did get what he wanted from the young man. According to the young man, the city lord's mansion had a history of countless years. Ever since the 9-heaven city appeared, the city lord's mansion had always been occupied by the people of the city lord's mansion. As for how the 9-heaven city appeared, the young man didn't know. However, he told Xiao Chen that there was a mysterious stone hall in the city lord's mansion. This stone hall was deep in the backyard of the city lord's mansion. It was a pity that other than the city lord himself, no one else could enter the stone hall. Moreover, every time a new person appeared in the 9-heaven city, the city lord would be the first to know from the stone hall. According to the ancestral teachings of the city lord's mansion, once a new person appeared in the 9-heaven city, they had to capture him at all costs and then imprison him. Although no one knew the meaning of the ancestral teachings, the city lords of the 9-heaven city carried it out very seriously. It was a pity that no new person had entered the 9-heaven city for many years. It was only today that Xiao Chen and Tianyu appeared. The young man didn't know much about the 9-heaven city. He only knew about the ancestral teachings and the mysterious stone hall. However, after hearing this, Xiao Chen was even more certain that the 9-heaven city and the city lord's mansion was a test left behind by the so-called emperor. Back then, he must have moved a group of people here and used the power of a great sage to block their path of cultivation. He also set up a seal to seal the cultivation of everyone who entered the 9-heaven city. After that, he used the city lord's mansion to carry out the test. As for the mysterious stone hall, it might be the location of the heavenly emperor's record. Even if it wasn't, it should be the door to the heavenly emperor's record. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1095. Mysterious Stone Palace. From the looks of it, he could only think of a way to go to the mysterious stone palace. However, according to the young man, if he wanted to enter the mysterious stone palace, he needed a token. This token was passed down from generation to generation in the City Lord mansion. Only the current City Lord had it. Only the current City Lord had it. In other words, if he wanted to enter the mysterious stone palace, he could only meet the City Lord. Lying in a pool of blood, the young man's breath was extremely weak. He had asked all the questions he needed. Xiao Chun looked at him and said indifferently, "Let me send you on your way, so that you won't have to suffer any more." After saying that, Xiao Chun pierced the young man's chest with a pair of scissors. After killing the young man without hesitation, Xiao Chun sat on the chair again. Tianyu was not dissatisfied with Xiao Chun's actions. Although she was inexperienced, she was not a soft-hearted person. Previously, she was only panicking because she suddenly lost her cultivation. Killing people was a common thing for Xiao Chun and Tianyu. Therefore, even if they lost their cultivation, killing a few people did not affect them at all. Seeing that Xiao Chun was deep in thought, Tianyu said softly, "What do you think the Sky Emperor Old Ancestor wants to test by setting up the ninth heaven? What is his purpose?" She already knew that the answer was in the mysterious stone palace. However, Tianyu did not understand why the Sky Emperor set up the ninth heaven. Hearing Tianyu's words, Xiao Chun said softly, "I think I understand." "You understand? Then tell me quickly." Tianyu asked anxiously. "It's simple. The Sky Emperor set up the ninth heaven to tell the future generations that the strong warriors are not only because of their cultivation. Even if they lose their cultivation one day, they should still be strong. Cultivation is the embodiment of a warrior's strength, but it is not the foundation of a warrior's strength. As long as they have the intention, they can recover their lost cultivation one day. This is also why the Sky Emperor set up the Nine-Heaven City and sealed everyone's cultivation. He also arranged for a City Lord mansion. Think about it, if one suddenly loses his cultivation and has to face the pursuit of the City Lord mansion, what would happen to a person who is not strong? "It's here." Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Tianyu said in a deep voice. Tianyu finally understood after Xiao Chen's explanation. That's right, wasn't it just like her? When she first arrived at the Nine-Heaven City, she suddenly lost her cultivation. Tianyu really panicked at that time. Then, she was captured and brought to the City Lord Mansion without any resistance. Think about it, if Xiao Chen was not here, what would have happened to her? She would definitely be trapped in the Nine-Heaven City until her death. There was still some lingering fear in her heart, but she was also glad that Xiao Chen was by her side this time. "What do you mean?" Tianyu asked doubtfully. Naturally, they were going to take action against the City Lord. Now that Xiao Chen had rescued Tianyu, according to Xiao Chen's original plan, they only needed to rescue Tianyu tonight and it would be considered a success. But now, Xiao Chen changed his mind. Since the young man was killed by him, the City Lord would definitely find out tomorrow at the latest. In this way, the guards of the City Lord Mansion would be strengthened greatly. At that time, it would be difficult to sneak into the City Lord Mansion. Therefore, Xiao Chen decided to take the opportunity to take action tonight. He would find the token to enter the mysterious stone hall in the City Lord Mansion and pass through the last layer of the sky above heavens. He explained his plan to Tianyu. Tianyu had no objections. Then, the two of them packed up and walked towards the City Lord's room. Along the way, they naturally encountered the patrolling guards. As soon as they walked out of the young man's small courtyard, Xiao Chen and Tianyu were stopped. "Hey, isn't this the newcomer? Where are you bringing him?" The leader of the guards looked at Tianyu suspiciously. Then, he looked at Xiao Chen and questioned him coldly. Xiao Chen had already thought of an excuse. In the face of the guard's question, he respectfully said in his heart, "The City Lord wants to see this newcomer. I am following his orders." After hearing Xiao Chen's words, the guard's expression eased a little. Since the city lord wanted to see the newcomer, there was naturally no problem. Moreover, Xiao Chen's words were perfect. After all, if Xiao Chen was here to save Tianyu, there was no reason for him to go straight to the city lord's room. Wouldn't that be walking right into a trap? Therefore, after confirming that Xiao Chen and Tianyu were really going to the city lord's room, the group of guards did not think too much about it. However, the leader was a little more cautious. He immediately ordered 2 of his subordinates to accompany Xiao Chen to the city lord's room. He thought that he was smart, but he did not know that Xiao Chen's heart was blooming with joy when he heard the leader's words. He was going to the city lord's room anyway. Now that he had 2 guards accompanying him, he would be very safe along the way. Even if he met other guards, he would not have to worry. He readily agreed to the leader's request. When the leader saw this, the doubts in his heart lessened. Then, he led his men and left. With the 2 guards accompanying him, they arrived at the city lord's room without any problems. The 2 guards did not enter the courtyard. On the other hand, Xiao Chen brought Tianyu and swaggered into the courtyard. It was already late at night, but the lights in the study room were still on. It was apparent that the city lord was not asleep yet. There were also 2 guards guarding the door. As they walked into the study room, Xiao Chen whispered to Tianyu, "1 each. Quickly get rid of these 2. After hearing Xiao Chen's words, Tianyu nodded. Soon, the 2 of them arrived outside the study room. Seeing the 2 of them approaching, one of the guards stopped them and asked, "Hold it. What's the matter?" "Sir, Xiao Chen bowed. But before he finished his sentence, a cold glint flashed. Then, a dagger directly pierced the guard's heart. At the same time, Tianyu had also successfully launched a sneak attack and killed the other guard. The 2 guards outside the door were easily killed. Xiao Chen pushed the door open and strode in. In the room, the city lord was looking at the materials in his hand. But at this moment the door was suddenly opened. He lifted his head and saw an unfamiliar young man walking in. The city lord's eyes were filled with doubts. On the other hand, Xiao Chen said with a smile, "City lord, it's not easy to find you here. Along the way there were so many twists and turns. It was like a maze. But I finally found you. There are some things that I think we can talk about face to face. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 1096. Are you a newcomer? The city lord's expression changed when he heard Xiao Chen's words. He was about to call for help, but Xiao Chen had already rushed forward and covered the city lord's mouth. He could only make muffled sounds. Xiao Chen held the city lord tightly as he struggled. He said with a calm smile on his face, "City lord, don't struggle anymore. Isn't it better for us to sit down and have a good chat?" Although Xiao Chen did not have any cultivation, it was not difficult for him to control the city lord who had lived like a prince all year round. Realizing that he could not break free from Xiao Chen's grip, the city lord slowly calmed down and stopped struggling. He nodded slightly. Xiao Chen released the city lord's mouth when he saw this. However, a dagger was placed on the city lord's neck. As long as the city lord made any strange movements, Xiao Chen would be able to kill him in the shortest time possible. The city lord forced himself to remain calm as he felt the chill on his neck. He asked Xiao Chen stiffly, "What do you want?" "Nothing much. I just want to leave this damned place. I heard that the city lord has a stone hall token. I think that if the city lord can give me the token and lead us to the stone hall, everyone will be happy." Xiao Chen chuckled softly. He had already guessed that the exit of Nine Heaven City was in the mysterious stone hall deep in the backyard of the city lord's mansion. Therefore, Xiao Chen's purpose for this trip was very clear. It was the token. The city lord's face darkened when he heard this. He could not figure out how Xiao Chen knew about the token. He inadvertently looked at Tianyu. Seeing this, the city lord suddenly had a bad premonition. "Since Tianyu is here, then where is my son?" A monstrous hatred flashed across the city lord's eyes. He looked at Xiao Chen and asked coldly, "Where is my son? What did you do to him?" "Don't worry, your son is fine. As long as you hand over the token, I won't hurt him. How about it?" Xiao Chen said with a smile. Xiao Chen had lied to the city lord. He had no choice but to do this in order to get the token. As expected, the city lord heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that his son was still alive. Then, he began to weigh the pros and cons. On one side was the ancestral token, and on the other was the life of his only son. The city lord had to make a choice between the two. Of course, the city lord did not know that his son had already been killed by Xiao Chen. He didn't urge Xiao Chen. In the end, the city lord made his choice. He took out an ancient token from a secret compartment on the bookshelf and handed it to Xiao Chen. "This is the token to open the stone hall. Where is my son?" the city lord said coldly as he handed the token to Xiao Chen. Hearing this, Xiao Chen took the token and said without any change in his expression, "I'll send you to see him now." After saying that, the frost python dagger in Xiao Chen's hand flashed and pierced into the city lord's heart. The city lord did not expect Xiao Chen to suddenly kill him. He looked at Xiao Chen unwillingly and said, You went back on your word." "No, I said that I would send you to see your son," Xiao Chen said. You killed my son," the city lord said unwillingly in the end. Then, he fell powerlessly into a pool of blood. Seeing that Xiao Chen killed the city lord without hesitation, Tianyue said, You lied to him." That's right, Xiao Chen did lie to the city lord and killed him in the end. However, Xiao Chen didn't feel that he did anything wrong. In order to survive, he had no choice but to use these despicable tricks. If we don't do this, we might be the ones to die. Don't forget that we don't have any cultivation now. If we alert the guards of the city lord's mansion, we'll be finished, Xiao Chen said after hearing Tianyue's words. Perhaps in Tianyue's opinion, the first holy son of the northern star realm like her and Xiao Chen shouldn't use such despicable means to deceive others. Xiao Chen's method was somewhat despicable. However, unlike Tianyue, Xiao Chen didn't feel that there was anything wrong with his method. Staying alive was the most important thing. If he didn't even have his life, what else was there to talk about? In Xiao Chen's eyes, a person who would give up the chance to live for the sake of being open and aboveboard was no different from an idiot. He didn't explain too much to Tianyue. After all, the two of them had different experiences growing up. Compared to Xiao Chen, Tianyue could be considered a flower that grew up in a greenhouse. Although she had experienced many battles, Tianyue really didn't have much experience with the dangers of time. After keeping the token, the two of them changed into the clothes of the two guards outside the door. Then, the two of them walked towards the stone hall in the depths of the backyard. With the identity of the two guards, it was indeed a lot more convenient to do things. At the very least, the two of them didn't encounter any obstacles along the way. As for the corpses of the city lord and his son, Xiao Chen didn't care at all. When the corpses of the father and son were discovered tomorrow, Xiao Chen and Tianyue would probably have left Nine Heavens City. They didn't encounter any obstacles along the way to the backyard. From afar, Xiao Chen could already see an ordinary-looking stone hall. There wasn't anything special about it. It looked very simple. Furthermore, there weren't many people around. Perhaps it was because they felt that the stone hall was very safe, so the successive city lords didn't arrange for anyone to guard the stone hall. Thinking about it, the stone hall was very likely built by the heavenly emperor sage. In this way, in Nine Heavens City, where there were no cultivators, it was naturally very safe. Furthermore, the token to open the stone hall was always kept by the current city lord. As long as the token wasn't lost, no one could enter the stone hall. In this way, there was naturally no need for anyone to guard the stone hall. However, this made Xiao Chen and Tianyue overjoyed. Without anyone guarding the stone hall, It would naturally save them a lot of trouble. They strode to the stone hall. The two stone doors were tightly shut. However, in the middle of the stone door there was a groove. The shape was exactly the same as the token. I wonder what kind of secrets this stone palace holds, Xiao Chen murmured to himself as he placed the token into the groove. Then, the stone door slowly opened. They couldn't see anything inside the stone hall. It was pitch black inside. However, when the stone door opened, Xiao Chen and Tianyue looked at each other. Then, they walked into the stone hall together. The stone hall was very likely to be the entrance to the most precious treasure in above heavens, the Heavenly Emperor record. Therefore, when they walked into the stone hall, even Xiao Chen couldn't help but feel a little excited. After working hard for so long and experiencing countless dangers, they finally saw the light of victory. How could they not be excited? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1097. They stepped into the stone palace. Just as Xiao Chen and Tianyue entered the palace, the stone door suddenly closed. At the same time, the surrounding walls of the stone palace emitted a burst of light. In an instant, the entire stone palace was illuminated with an incomparably clear light. The stone hall wasn't very large and there wasn't much in it. However, there was a stone door at the center of the stone hall. This stone door was exactly the same as the stone door that connected to the 9 heavens above heaven. Where does this stone door lead to? Tianyue looked at the stone door and asked doubtfully. Hearing this, Xiao Chen curiously went forward to size up the stone door. After which, he pushed the stone door open and said indifferently, "No matter where it leads to, we don't seem to have any other choice. It's better to be trapped in 9 Heavens City without any cultivation." Now that the city lord and his son had been killed by him, their bodies would definitely be discovered once the sun rose. At that time, if Xiao Chen and Tianyue were still in the city, it would be dangerous. After all, Xiao Chen and Tianyue were ordinary people without any cultivation in 9 Heavens City. It was impossible for them to fend off the thousands of guards in the city lord's estate. Tianyue nodded when he heard Xiao Chen's words. After which, the two of them stepped into the stone door and instantly disappeared. Not long after, when the two of them regained their consciousness, they arrived at a world filled with birds and fragrant flowers. The surroundings were filled with green trees and grass. However, there was a ball of light floating in midair at the center. When he saw the ball of light, Xiao Chen was puzzled. Sky Emperor record? I don't know. Tianyue shook his head when he heard this. It didn't seem like there was any danger here. It should be the final place in 9 Heaven City. Moreover, Xiao Chen and Tianyue's cultivations had completely returned. When he felt the surging spiritual energy in his body, Xiao Chen smiled and said, "It's still better to have cultivation." Suddenly turning from a Tao Emperor stage expert to an ordinary person was indeed a terrible feeling. Now that his cultivation had returned, Xiao Chen felt much better about himself. With a cultivation base, it was equivalent to having confidence. It was not like in the 9 Heavens City, where he could not fight back when he encountered danger. They walked towards the ball of light together. In the end, Xiao Chen gestured for Tianyue to take the ball of light. After all, it was very likely that the Heavenly Emperor record was within it, and the Heavenly Emperor record was the most precious treasure of the Sky Clan. Naturally, it was best for Tianyue to take it. Xiao Chen didn't covet the Heavenly Emperor record too much. Firstly, it was because 9 Heavens and the Sacred Palace were currently in an alliance. Xiao Chen naturally wouldn't break the alliance just because of the Heavenly Emperor record. Secondly, no matter how precious the Heavenly Emperor record was, Xiao Chen wouldn't snatch it from Tianyue's hands. Seeing that Xiao Chen had given the opportunity to her, a happy smile appeared on Tianyue's face. She stepped forward and extended her hand into the ball of light. Very quickly, an ancient rune tablet appeared in her hand. Xiao Chen was no stranger to ancient rune tablet. Xiao Chen had already seen one in the Sky Expanse Sect's secret territory. However, the ancient rune tablet in Tian Yu's hand was different from the one he saw in the Sky Expanse Sect's secret territory. It was completely golden and much larger in size. With a single glance, one could tell that the value of this ancient rune tablet far exceeded the few ancient rune tablets in the Sky Expanse Sect's secret territory. The Heavenly Emperor record should be recorded in this ancient rune tablet, right? Xiao Chen smiled as he looked at Tian Yu. There was only relief on his face, and there wasn't the slightest bit of greed. I've finally obtained the Heavenly Emperor record. I'm safe now, Xiao Chen thought. Tian Yu smiled faintly at Xiao Chen's words. It was rare for her to tease Xiao Chen. Why? Is little brother not the least bit tempted by the Heavenly Emperor record? It could be said that it was the most precious treasure of the Sky Clan. There weren't many people in the entire northern star boundary who wouldn't be tempted by the Heavenly Emperor record. Xiao Chen snapped at Tian Yu's joke. This belongs to your Sky Clan. What's there to be tempted by? Besides, didn't Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun promise me a great opportunity? Alright, keep it well and look around to see if there are any other treasures. If there aren't any, it's time for us to return. After instructing Tian Yu to keep the ancient rune tablet well, Xiao Chen and Tian Yu searched the surroundings again. However, they didn't find anything else of value. Presumably, the ancient rune tablet recorded all the treasures left behind by the Supreme Sovereign Tian Yu. However, Tian Yu didn't know what was recorded in the ancient rune tablet. She didn't know what was recorded in the ancient rune tablet. Everything would have to wait until they returned to the ninth heaven, and the three quasi-saint supreme sovereigns of the ninth heaven would personally open it to check. Since they didn't find anything else of value, Xiao Chen and Tian Yu began to think of a way to leave this place. In fact, it wasn't difficult. Very quickly, the two of them found the exit to the sky beyond. Now that the two of them had successfully passed through the 9 heavens of the above heavens, there was naturally no danger. Just as the two of them were about to leave, Tian Yu suddenly asked, Xiao Chen, now that we have taken away the Heavenly Emperor record, what do you think will happen to the people in the 9 Heavens City? The existence of the 9 Heavens City was to test the future generations. Now that the Heavenly Emperor record had been taken away by the two of them, the above Heavens City had lost its value. The people in the 9 Heavens City were naturally useless. Hearing this, Xiao Chen fell silent for a moment. Then, he said indifferently, they will probably continue to live here like this in this small world that no one knows about. The 9 Heavens City could be said to be completely isolated from the outside world. Furthermore, the people inside couldn't cultivate at all. It was like a paradise. Perhaps the people who lived in the 9 Heavens City only knew that the 9 Heavens City was as big as the North Star boundary. They didn't know that the 9 Heavens City was as small as a grain of sand when compared to the vastness of the North Star boundary. They had never interacted with the outside world since they were young. Their lives were simple and honest. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Tian Yu said with pity, then they are so pitiful. They have to live in the small 9 Heavens City for their entire lives. Pitiful? I feel that this is a kind of fortune. At least the 9 Heavens City may be small, but it is safe. The chaos of the outside world won't affect the 9 Heavens City at all. In the 9 Heavens City, they can at least enjoy a rare peace, Xiao Chen said. Without waiting for Tian Yu's reply, Xiao Chen took the initiative to hold her hand and walked towards the exit. At the same time, he said slowly, all right, the 9 Heavens City is ultimately not in the same world as us. Let's not disturb the peace of the 9 Heavens City. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1098. In Xiao Chen's opinion, he probably wouldn't have any more interactions with 9 Heavens City in the future. As for the people in 9 Heavens City without any cultivation base, they should still be living in 9 Heavens City as usual. Nine Heavens City was like a city locked in a cage. The people in it didn't know the vastness of the world at all, but in Xiao Chen's words, it was also a kind of luck to be able to live here. Because the outside world wasn't suitable for ordinary people like them, it was better to live in Nine Heavens City than to become ants that could be killed at any time in the outside world. It was a cage at any time, but it was also safe. This cage seemed to be imprisoning them, but from another perspective it was also a kind of protection. At least they could live a peaceful and stable life here. However, Xiao Chen didn't think too much about it. He held Tian Yu's hand and the two walked through the exit together, leaving Sky Beyond Sky. It had been almost a month in Sky Beyond Sky. After going through hardships, Xiao Chen and Tian Yu finally obtained the Sky Emperor record. When the two left Sky Beyond Sky and returned to Nine Heavens, they still appeared at the entrance. However, as soon as Xiao Chen and Tian Yu appeared, Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun also appeared in front of them. Obviously, Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun had been paying attention to this place during this period, so she sensed Xiao Chen and Tian Yu as soon as they came out. Seeing the two return safely from above sky, Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun couldn't help but smile. You succeeded? There was a hint of surprise in her words. It could make a quasi-sage Supreme Sovereign lose control of her emotions. This showed how important the Sky Emperor record was to the Sky Clan. Hearing Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun's words, Tian Yu smiled and replied, "Yes, I succeeded." Tian Yu also handed the golden ancient rune steel to Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun. Looking at the ancient rune steel in her hand, Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun felt that the golden ancient rune steel in her hand weighed 1,000 pounds. After the efforts of generations of saints in Nine Heavens, they finally obtained the Sky Emperor record today. Even Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun was a little overwhelmed. Fortunately, Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun was no ordinary individual. She quickly calmed down and quietly kept the golden ancient rune tablet. After which, she looked at Xiao Chen and smiled. This time, it's all thanks to chosen Xiao Chen's help. Don't worry, the alliance between the Sacred Palace and Nine Heavens has basically been set. The Supreme Divine Sect and Liwang Sect also have intentions of forming an alliance and have already sent people to the Sacred Palace. Also, I won't go back on my word about the great opportunity. Rest for a few days, I'll send someone to inform you when the time comes. Since Xiao Chen had helped Tian Yu obtain the ancient rune steel, Grand Venerate Tian Yun wouldn't go back on her words. Hearing Great Senior Tian Yun's words, Xiao Chen cupped his hands and bowed. Great Senior is too serious. I'm just doing my best. Haha, alright, you don't need to be humble. Go and rest first. By the way, someone came all the way from the Sacred Palace to Nine Heavens and has been waiting for you. Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun was in a good mood when she heard Xiao Chen's words. Xiao Chen was taken aback when he heard Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun say that someone had come from the Sacred Palace to Nine Heavens. After some questioning, Xiao Chen learned that Qin Shuru and the other two girls had come from the Sacred Palace to Nine Heavens. The three girls were probably worried that something would happen to him. Xiao Chen couldn't help but smile when he heard that the three girls were in Nine Heavens. Tian Yu couldn't help but feel a little jealous when she saw Xiao Chen's sweet smile when he heard that Qin Shuru and the other two girls had come. Even when Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun spoke to her, Tian Yu didn't respond in a good mood. Tian Yu, you should also go and rest. Come to the main hall tomorrow morning. Tian Yu coldly snorted and said, "Humph, I'm not tired." However, someone has probably wanted to return to his home for a long time. Tian Yu turned and left without waiting for Xiao Chen's reply. Xiao Chen was a little puzzled when he saw Tian Yu's departing figure. What was wrong with that girl? Wasn't she fine just now? However, a strange look flashed across Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun's eyes before she shook her head helplessly. Xiao Chen didn't know what was wrong with Tian Yu for her to suddenly become so angry, but he couldn't care less now. Qin Shuru and the other two girls had come all the way to Nine Heavens, and Xiao Chen wanted to see them as soon as possible. Xiao Chen no longer thought about Tianyu. After bidding farewell to Supreme Sovereign Tianyun, he went straight to the residence of Qin Shuru and the other two girls. They had specially arranged accommodations for the three girls, and the sacred palace had also sent 2 sacred sovereigns to accompany them. When Xiao Chen arrived at the residence of the 3 girls, he saw the 3 girls sitting in a bamboo pavilion in the courtyard as soon as he entered the backyard. With a smile on his face, Xiao Chen happily stepped forward. He originally wanted to give the 3 girls a hug, but unfortunately, he didn't get a hug. Instead, he was reprimanded. "Stop!" Qin Shuru shouted when he saw Xiao Chen quickly walking over. Hearing this, Xiao Chen unconsciously stopped and looked at the 3 women in confusion. However, at this time, the 3 women all looked cold and stern, and there was a faint anger in their eyes. It seemed that they were angry. Sure enough, seeing Xiao Chen stop, Qin Shuru continued, "Do you still have us in your heart? Entering above heavens is such a big matter, but you didn't even discuss it with us. Have you ever thought about what we would do if something happened to you in above heavens?" Obviously, the 3 girls were very angry about Xiao Chen's decision to enter above heavens on his own. Xiao Chen was also helpless about this. He had no choice at all in that situation. Xiao Chen comforted the 3 girls softly in the face of their anger. However, no matter what Xiao Chen said this time, the 3 girls refused to let him go. Even Gu Lingyao stood firmly on the same side as Qin Shuru and Bai Yuanjin. While Xiao Chen was doing his best to coax the 3 girls, on the other side, Tianyu was sitting in the courtyard with a face full of anger. She cursed in a low voice, "Stinky Xiao Chen, damn Xiao Chen, you value your lover over your friends. Don't tell me that I have no place in your heart at all? The moment you heard that your wife is coming, you can't wait to go over. You're infuriating me to death." Tianyu scolded continuously. She didn't know why, but when she saw the sweet smile on Xiao Chen's face when Qin Shuru and the other 2 girls arrived, Tianyu couldn't help but feel angry. When he was with her, Xiao Chen had never revealed such a smile. For a moment, Tianyu felt incomparably jealous. Just as Tianyu was cursing Xiao Chen, a girl who was about the same age as Tianyu and had outstanding looks walked into the courtyard. "Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 1099. The young lady who walked into the courtyard was also wearing the holy sun robe of 9 heavens. Her name was Lan Ye, and she was the second holy daughter of 9 heavens. Among the younger generation of 9 heavens, her strength was second only to Tianyu. Besides, perhaps due to their similar status and strength, Lan Ye and Tianyu had been close friends since they were young. This time, Lan Ye had been sweating profusely for Tianyu after she entered above heavens. After hearing that Tianyu had returned safely from above heavens and obtained the Sky Emperor record, Lan Ye couldn't wait to visit her. She wanted to congratulate Tianyu for obtaining the Sky Emperor record, but as soon as she entered the courtyard, she saw Tianyu cursing under her breath in anger. Lan Ye walked over with a smile. "Yo, what's wrong? Who made our holy daughter Tianyu angry?" At first, Tianyu didn't notice Lan Ye's arrival, but after hearing these words, Tianyu jumped up like a cat whose tail was stepped on, and said in a panic, "No." Tianyu was nervous. Lan Ye's smile widened. Tianyu had never shown such an expression before. In an instant, Lan Ye was even more certain that Tianyu must have something on her mind. Lan Ye wasn't in a hurry. She strolled to Tianyu's side and sat down. Then, she seemed to be chatting casually, but she kept asking Tianyu what was wrong. Under Lan Ye's constant questioning, Tianyu told her why she was angry. After hearing that it was because of Xiao Chen, a strange glint flashed in Lan Ye's eyes. Perhaps Tianyu didn't know why she was so angry, but Lan Ye knew clearly that Tianyu was probably, however, Lanya didn't point it out. It was hard to say what happened between Tian Yu and Xiao Chen. After all, Tian Yu was the first holy daughter of 9 heavens and could be said to be the goddess of the entire sky race. Besides, the sky race was extremely xenophobic, so it was hard to say what happened between Tian Yu and Xiao Chen. At the very least, there would be a lot of resistance. In addition, both parties involved had not realized the other party's attitude. Even Tianyue was confused and did not know why she was so angry. Therefore, Lanya did not point it out. Instead, she quickly changed the topic. With Lanya's company, Tian Yu's mood improved quickly. The two of them chatted casually in the courtyard. Of course, most of the time, Tian Yu told Lanya about her and Xiao Chen's experience in Above Heavens. Looking at the smile on Tianyue's face every time she mentioned Xiao Chen, Lanya could not help but sigh inwardly. This little girl had probably fallen too deep into it. While Tian Yu and Lanya were chatting, Xiao Chen on the other side had finally appeased Qin Shuru and the other 2 women. The anger in the 3 women's hearts had dissipated. In fact, the reason why the 3 of them were so angry was entirely because they were worried about Xiao Chen. This made Xiao Chen feel warm in his heart. Because Supreme Venerate Tian Yun promised to give Xiao Chen a great opportunity, Xiao Chen didn't intend to leave 9 heavens so quickly. After all, he had narrowly escaped death this time. Although he had obtained a lot of benefits, such as the ancient ghost withered vine's tree sap, Xiao Chen's physical body had improved a lot. Now that there was a great opportunity waiting for him, Xiao Chen naturally wouldn't give it up. He stayed in 9 heavens with Qin Shuru and the other 2 girls. On the morning of the 2nd day, Supreme Venerate Tian Yun and the other 3 quasi-saint venerables of 9 heavens gathered in the main hall of 9 heavens. Tian Yu was also present. There were only 4 people in the huge hall. In front of the 4 of them, the golden ancient rune tablet was suspended in mid-air. In the end, Supreme Venerate Tian Yun personally opened the ancient rune tablet. What was recorded in the ancient rune tablet was the Heavenly Emperor record. As the ancient rune tablet was opened, even Supreme Venerate Tian Yun and the other 3 quasi-saint venerables couldn't help but be excited. This was the inheritance left behind by a supreme saint. The ancient rune tablet was opened, and the contents were soon presented to the 4 of them. Most of them were the various superpowers of the sky race. It was very comprehensive, from low to high, and almost covered all the sky race superpowers that the Heavenly Emperor Great Sage had mastered in his life. In addition, there were 2 more important records. They were records about the use and cultivation of the sky race mark, and records about how to break through to the Great Saint realm. These 2 records were extremely valuable, especially the one about the use and cultivation of the sky race mark. As everyone knew, the source of power of the sky race all came from the mark on their foreheads. Unlike the human race, the sky race didn't have an elixir field. The mark on their foreheads was equivalent to the elixir field of other races. They were born with it, and as their cultivation realm increased, the power of the mark would become stronger. How to use and cultivate the mark on the forehead was directly related to the strength of the sky race. Unable to hide the excitement in their eyes, Supreme Venerate Tian Yun and the other 3 quasi-saint venerables looked at the records in front of them in surprise. After a long while, Supreme Venerate Tian Yun put away the golden ancient rune tablet and suppressed the excitement in her heart. Tian Yu has made a great contribution this time. With this, the strength of our sky race will soar a lot. Upon hearing Supreme Venerate Tian Yun's words, the other 2 quasi-saint Supreme Venerates nodded in agreement. However, Tian Yu suddenly spoke up. Supreme Venerate, I would like to make a copy of the method to break through to the Great Saint realm for the Sacred Palace. After all, chosen Xiao Chen's contribution is indispensable for obtaining the Heavenly Emperor record. Without him, I definitely wouldn't have been able to successfully obtain the Heavenly Emperor record. Tian Yu actually spoke up for the Sacred Palace at such a time. In fact, rather than saying it was for the sacred palace, it was better to say it was for Xiaochen. In Tian Yu's heart, the trip to above heavens this time was indeed thanks to Xiaochen's help. She originally wanted to give Xiaochen more things, but the content recorded in the Heavenly Emperor record was only the record on how to break through to the Great Saint Realm that was helpful to the Sacred Palace. The other Sky Race divine abilities and the method to cultivate the Sky Race mark were useless to the Sacred Palace. Even if they obtained it, no one in the Sacred Palace would be able to cultivate it. Therefore, after thinking about it, only the record on how to break through to the Great Saint Realm would be helpful to the Sacred Palace and Xiaochen. Supreme Venerate Tian Yun and the other two looked at each other when they heard Tian Yu's words. In the end, one of them, who looked like an old man, spoke up. The record on how to break through to the Great Saint Realm? Never mind, let's make a copy and give it to the Sacred Palace as a way of thanking Xiaochen for his help this time. They didn't reject Tian Yu's suggestion. After all, the record on how to break through to the Great Saint Realm wasn't considered a secret. It wouldn't be a loss for the Sky Race and 9 Heavens, so it wasn't impossible to make a copy and give it to the Sacred Palace. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendations. Chapter 1100. The three Supreme Venerates agreed to Tian Yu's proposal. After all, this record of breaking through to the Great Saint Realm only pointed out the path. It didn't mean that it could definitely help people break through to the Great Saint Realm. It could even be said that those who could break through to the Great Saint Realm would break through sooner or later. It was useless for those who couldn't break through to the Great Saint Realm even if they knew this because they didn't have the qualifications to break through to the Great Saint Realm. Because of this, it wasn't a big deal to give this record of breaking through to the Great Saint Realm to the Sacred Palace. Moreover, it could also do a favor to the Sacred Palace. Why not? In fact, Great Venerate Tian Yun and the others were very conflicted about this record of breaking through to the Great Sage Realm, because this thing was indeed precious because there was no record of the Great Sage Realm in the entire North Star boundary. It could be said that the record of the Emperor Sage Realm in the Emperor record was a priceless treasure. However, although it was precious, it was also of little value in other aspects because even if you obtained it, you still couldn't break through to the Great Saint Realm if your talent wasn't enough. Because of this, Supreme Venerate Tian Yun was very conflicted about this record of the Great Saint Realm. It was both precious and worthless. Perhaps it was because of this that Supreme Venerate Tian Yun and the others agreed to make a copy of it and give it to the Sacred Palace. Tian Yu thanked them happily after receiving the agreement of the three Supreme Venerates. The reason she proposed to make a copy of this thing and give it to the Sacred Palace was mostly because of Xiaochen. He put away the golden ancient inscription tablet properly. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the Sky Race mystic ability and the cultivation method of the Sky Race imprint were the ultimate treasures of the 9th heaven. Therefore, these things were naturally kept by the three quasi-saint Supreme Venerate. Of course, as a meritorious person, Tian Yu could cultivate the divine ability at any time since she had successfully brought back the Emperor God record and was the first Holy Lady of 9 Heavens. The three Supreme Venerates didn't tell anyone about the contents of the Emperor God record after secretly opening it. These things were the foundation of 9 Heavens and would gradually be passed down to the many disciples under them in the future. After staying in the large hall for about 4 hours, Alchemy Venerate Tian Yun and the others left. Tian Yu also left the large hall. Tian Yu originally planned to return to her residence, but for some reason, she actually came to Xiaochen's residence. A complicated look flashed in Tian Yu's eyes as she stood outside the courtyard. She didn't know why she had come here. Just as Tian Yu was hesitating about whether to go in, the courtyard door was suddenly opened and a beautiful young girl with 2 ponytails walked out. The girl was none other than Gu Lingyao. After what had happened yesterday, The little girl had regained her lively personality and was no longer angry with Xiao Chen. Gu Lingyao bounced open the courtyard door, but when she saw Tianyu standing outside, she was stunned for a moment, but she quickly recovered and smiled politely. Looking at the 9 heavens holy sun robe that Tianyu was wearing, Gu Lingyao naturally assumed that she was here to look for Xiao Chen. Tianyu forced a smile and said, "Yes, I have some matters to discuss with Xiao Chen." Tianyu didn't know why, but she always felt a little uncomfortable when facing Gu Lingyao. Tianyu's character wouldn't be like this, but she couldn't help it. She just couldn't control her nervousness. Gu Lingyao, on the other hand, came forward with great enthusiasm and personally led Tianyu into the courtyard. In the backyard, Xiao Chen, who was cultivating, saw Gu Lingyao bring Tianyu in. He didn't think much and took the initiative to greet them and introduce them to each other. After knowing Tianyu's identity, Qin Shuru and the others greeted her in a friendly manner. However, Tianyu just nodded coldly, as if she was a little nervous. Xiao Chen didn't notice Tianyu's abnormality, but 100 Flower Fairy saw some clues. However, she didn't point it out. Instead, she took the initiative to speak to Xiao Chen. "Husband, holy daughter Tian, you must have something to discuss with you. You can chat, we'll take our leave first." She took the initiative to lead Qin Shuru and Gu Lingyao out of the courtyard. After the 3 women left, Xiao Chen personally invited Tianyu to sit in the pavilion in the courtyard. He asked as he poured a cup of tea for Tianyu, "Is there something you want to discuss with me?" Without Qin Shuru and the other 2 women, Tianyu felt a lot more relaxed. She immediately replied, "Why? Can't I look for you if there's nothing?" Xiao Chen was stunned by Tianyu's words. What's wrong with this girl? She had been inexplicably angry since she came back yesterday. Today, her words were also sarcastic. He didn't seem to have offended her, right? The sarcastic tone in Tianyu's words made Xiao Chen a little confused. He didn't remember provoking her. Tianyu couldn't help but laugh when she saw Xiao Chen's gloomy face. "All right, I naturally have something to discuss with you. Look at you, you look like you've been wronged." Without Qin Shuru and the other 2 women present, Tianyu was indeed a lot more relaxed. Then, Tianyu briefly told Xiao Chen about the Sky Emperor records. Finally, she told Xiao Chen that 9 Heavens was going to copy a record of the Great Saint stage and send it to the Sacred Palace. Xiao Chen naturally wouldn't refuse Tianyu's request. The record of the Great Saint stage was indeed a peerless treasure. Only a fool would refuse. He immediately agreed. Then, the 2 of them sat in the pavilion. Perhaps because Xiao Chen was a little anxious, Tianyu also dictated the record of the Great Saint stage to Xiao Chen. In fact, the record of the Great Saint stage was only a few short sentences. The Great Saint stage stands above the heavens. In order to become a great saint, in addition to origin energy, one must also sail against the current and break through the heavens. The meaning of these words was very simple. In order to break through to the Great Saint stage, in addition to having sufficient origin energy, one must also sail against the current and break through the heavens. Hearing Tianyu's words, Xiao Chen seemed to be reciting, "Sail against the current and break through the heavens?" These 2 sentences were the key to breaking through to the Great Saint stage. However, Xiao Chen didn't have the slightest clue about this so-called sailing against the current and breaking through the heavens. What was breaking through the heavens? What did it mean? He couldn't figure it out. Tianyu smiled faintly and said, "If you can't figure it out, then don't think about it. In any case, we're only at the Tao Emperor stage now. Let alone the Great Saint stage, even the Saint stage is still very far away. Moreover, the meaning of these 2 sentences should be understood when we break through to the quasi-saint stage one day. As for now, let's leave this question to the great sovereigns to figure it out themselves." Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1101. Sailing Against the Current, Breaking Through the Sky. These were the two most important sentences in the records of the Great Saint Realm. However, Xiao Chen still couldn't understand the meaning of these two sentences. Hearing Tianyu's words, Xiao Chen didn't dwell on it anymore. Indeed, he was only at the initial Tao Emperor stage. It was a little too early to think about these things now. After taking a sip of tea, Xiao Chen smiled and said, "That's right. It's still too early to think about these things. At least, I have to wait until I break through to the Saint Realm before considering these problems. That's for the best. It's useless to think about these things now. It's better to think about the matter at hand first. Great Senior promised to give you a great opportunity. You have to be prepared." Hearing this, Tianyu also smiled and said. Xiao Chen's interest was piqued when he heard Tianyu talk about the great opportunity mentioned by Supreme Venerate Tianyun. He had always been curious about the great opportunity mentioned by Supreme Venerate Tianyun. After all, if a quasi-sage Supreme Venerate called it a great opportunity, it must not be simple. Since Tianyu mentioned this matter now, Xiao Chen also asked, "Do you know what the great opportunity that Great Senior Tianyun mentioned is?" "Of course I know." Tianyu smiled and said. "Really? Why don't you tell me so that I can be prepared?" Xiao Chen said. Tianyu knew what the great opportunity that Great Senior Tianyun mentioned was. Under Xiao Chen's questioning, she also told Xiao Chen the truth. According to Tianyu, the great opportunity that Great Senior Tianyun mentioned should be the Heavenly Thunder Realm. There were many cultivation secret realms in 9 heavens, but there were only 2 that could truly be said to be unparalleled in the world and could be called the foundation of 9 heavens. One was the Heavenly Domain Secret Realm, and the other was the Heavenly Thunder Realm. These 2 secret zones could be said to be the foundation of 9 heavens. The Sky Domain Secret Zone could be said to be the holy land of cultivation that all 9 heavens disciples dreamed of. Unfortunately, the Sky Domain Secret Zone wasn't a place that could be entered casually. Even holy sons and holy daughters wouldn't be able to enter it easily. Even Tianyue, the number 1 holy maiden of the 9 heavens, had only entered the Heaven Domain Secret Realm twice. Furthermore, she had only stayed there for less than 10 days each time. But even so, going to the Sky Domain Mystic Realm twice still gave Tianyu unimaginable benefit. As for the Heavenly Thunder World, it was one of the 2 secret realms of the 9 heavens that was equally as famous as the Heaven Domain Secret Realm. Naturally, it was also extremely extraordinary. However, it was a pity that compared to the Heaven Domain Secret Realm, the Heavenly Thunder World seemed to be neglected. This wasn't to say that the Heavenly Thunder Realm wasn't good. On the contrary, the Heavenly Thunder Realm wasn't inferior to the Heaven Domain Mystic Realm at all. The reason for this was because of the Heaven Race's cultivation. The greatest benefit of the Heavenly Thunder World was the cultivation of the physical body. In terms of the cultivation of the physical body, the Heavenly Thunder World could be said to be the best secret zone in the entire North Star boundary. However, there were almost no people who cultivated the physical body in the Tian clan, because the cultivation of the Tian clan was closely related to the Tian clan imprint, and they all revolved around the Tian clan imprint. As a result, there was naturally no one who cultivated the physical body. Without anyone cultivating the physical body, the Heavenly Thunder World naturally didn't have much use for the Heaven Race. Therefore, the Heavenly Thunder World seemed very deserted. There was almost no one who went back to pay attention to the Heavenly Thunder World. However, the value and strength of the Heavenly Thunder World couldn't be denied. This was because the Liwang sect and Myriad Beasts Valley had proposed to the 9 heavens more than once that they were willing to pay a huge price in exchange for the Heavenly Thunder World. The Heavenly Thunder World was of little value to the Heaven Race because they didn't cultivate the physical body. However, to the Barbarian Race and Beast Race, it was simply a priceless treasure, especially to the Barbarian Race. He remembered that the most recent time was 20 years ago. A quasi-sage great sovereign of the Liwang sect personally came and was willing to use 2 secret zones of the Liwang sect to exchange for the heavenly thunder world. To be able to offer such a high price, it could be seen how much the Liwang sect coveted the heavenly thunder world. From this, it could be seen how powerful the heavenly thunder world was. Xiao Chen's tempered battle physique was very strong. Therefore, the heavenly thunder world was undoubtedly of great help to Xiao Chen. After telling Xiao Chen about the heavenly thunder world in detail, Xiao Chen was secretly excited. Now that his tempered battle physique had reached the limit of the 2nd layer of the Jade Organ Realm, if the heavenly thunder world was as Tian Yu said, then he had a high chance of breaking through to the 3rd layer of the heavenly thunder body. Thinking about it, if the tempered battle physique broke through to the 3rd layer of the heavenly thunder body, at that time, even if he was compared to the first saint of the Liwang sect, Tong Huang, his physical body wouldn't be much inferior. He was secretly looking forward to it. Seeing the light in Xiao Chen's eyes, Tian Yu smiled and said, "Moreover, because no one has entered the heavenly thunder world for many years, there is a lot of heavenly thunder accumulated inside. It is completely enough for your physical body to cultivate. Therefore, this time, you have gained a huge advantage. If Tong Huang knew about it, he would probably be jealous to death. Because no one had entered the heavenly thunder world for many years, it was definitely the best time to cultivate. At this time, the first person to enter would be able to obtain unexpected benefit." Hearing Tian Yu's words, Xiao Chen smiled slightly. He really wanted to see what kind of expression Tong Huang would have when he found out that he had entered the heavenly thunder world. The 2 of them chatted in the courtyard, and on the other side, Qin Shuru and the other 2 girls were sitting together. Gu Lingyao looked at 100 Flower Fairy with a puzzled expression and asked, "Sister 100 Flower, why did you pull us out?" Previously, 100 Flower Fairy had forcefully pulled the 2 of them out, and Gu Lingyao was very puzzled. Hearing this, 100 Flower Fairy smiled and said, "I say, didn't you feel Tian Yu's attitude towards my husband?" 100 Flower Fairy was indeed an intelligent woman, but she had already felt Tian Yu's feelings towards Xiao Chen the first time she met her. That was why she pulled Qin Shuru and Gu Lingyao away. Hearing 100 Flower Fairy's words, Gu Lingyao's eyes flashed, and she said with some surprise, "Does Sister 100 Flower mean that Saintess Tian Yu likes big brother Xiao Chen? That's impossible, she is the #1 saintess of the 9 heavens. Even she likes big brother Xiao Chen?" Gu Lingyao was pleasantly surprised that Tian Yu might like Xiao Chen. Hearing the little girl's words, 100 Flower Fairy helplessly smiled bitterly and said, "You little girl, now that someone has come to snatch your big brother Xiao Chen, what are you still happy about? Hee, I just didn't expect that someone like Tian Yu would like big brother Xiao Chen, hee." Hearing this, Gu Lingyao laughed. She didn't mean to be jealous. As soon as Gu Lingyao finished speaking, Qin Shuru helplessly sighed and said, "Even the #1 saintess of the 9 heavens has fallen for him. Should I say that my husband is fickle in love, or that his charm is too great that even Tian Yu can't resist? Please add, please vote, please recommend." Chapter 1102. Back in the Heavenly River continent, Xiao Chen had made a promise with the 3 girls. But now Tian Yu had appeared. For a moment, the 3 girls didn't know what to feel. They weren't jealous, because a woman like Tian Yu naturally had high standards. The fact that she could take a fancy to Xiao Chen was actually proof of Xiao Chen's charm. If it were any other woman, the 3 girls would definitely not agree. But the other party was Tian Yu, and the 3 girls couldn't even bring themselves to be jealous. Take Gu Lingyao for example. Forget about being jealous, when she found out that Tian Yu also liked Xiao Chen, she was elated. Following Qin Shuru's words, 100 Flower Fairy also sighed softly and said, "But I think my husband doesn't seem to be interested in Tian Yu. Forget it, let's wait and see. I think Tian Yu is not a casual woman. Let's see what she has to say first." Hearing this, Qin Shuru said lightly. Xiao Chen didn't have any interest in Tianyu, and Tianyu's feelings for Xiao Chen were still hazy. Since the two of them hadn't made it clear, 100-Flower Fairy and the other two girls decided to wait and see. Unaware that the three girls had already seen through Tianyu's thoughts, on the other side, after Xiao Chen and Tianyu chatted for a while, Tianyu bid farewell and left. Xiao Chen personally sent her out of the courtyard. After sending Tianyu off, Qin Shuru and the other two girls returned to the backyard. They didn't mention anything about Tianyu, and Xiao Chen obviously didn't think too much about it. At this time, Xiao Chen's mind was filled with thoughts about the Sky Thunder Realm. According to Tianyu, being able to enter the Sky Thunder Realm this time was indeed a great opportunity for Xiao Chen. In the Sky Thunder Realm, Xiao Chen must find a way to improve his physical body's quality. Xiao Chen agreed with Tianyu's words. It was a rare opportunity. If he couldn't raise his tempered battle body to the third heavenly level, it would be a waste of this excellent opportunity. Knowing how precious this opportunity was, Xiao Chen began to prepare for the Sky Thunder boundary. One day later, Supreme Sovereign Tianyun sent someone to find Xiao Chen. Following behind this Nine Heavens Saint, Xiao Chen arrived at the Nine Heavens Great Hall. When Xiao Chen arrived, Great Paragon Tianyun and Tianyu were already waiting in the Great Hall. Upon seeing Xiao Chen, Supreme Venerate Tianyun said faintly, Tianyu has already told you about the Sky Thunder Realm, right? Yes, I did. Xiao Chen nodded and replied. He wasn't surprised that Supreme Venerate Tianyun knew that he already knew about the Sky Thunder Realm. Seeing Xiao Chen nod, Supreme Venerate Tianyun continued. There is no time limit for letting you enter the Sky Thunder Realm this time. As long as you can withstand the attack of the Sky Thunder, you can cultivate for as long as you want. Therefore, the longer you can persist, the more benefits you will get. Do your best. Supreme Venerate Tianyun was already very considerate of Xiao Chen. Not only did she let Xiao Chen enter the Sky Thunder Realm, but she also didn't set a time limit. Xiao Chen could cultivate for as long as he could withstand the Sky Thunder in the Sky Thunder Realm. Hearing this, Xiao Chen cupped his hands and thanked her. Then, Supreme Venerate Tianyun didn't waste any time and directly brought Xiao Chen to the Sky Thunder Realm with Tianyu by his side. As one of the two secret realms of the Nine Heavens, the entrance to the Sky Thunder Realm was naturally a forbidden area. There were 4 saints of the Nine Heavens in charge of guarding it. Without the approval of a quasi-sage, no one was allowed to approach it, let alone enter. This time, with Supreme Venerate Tianyun personally leading the way, Xiao Chen and his group naturally didn't encounter any obstacles and smoothly arrived at the entrance of the Sky Thunder Realm. Standing in front of the entrance, Supreme Venerate Tianyun said, "The entrance has been opened. Take this token. If you can't withstand the Sky Thunder Realm, crush the token and you can return. Go." Receiving the token from Supreme Venerate Tianyun, Xiao Chen cupped his hands and thanked her. Then, he nodded at Tianyu and strode into the Sky Thunder Realm alone. With Xiao Chen's entry, the entrance closed and Supreme Venerate Tianyun left with Tianyu. The opportunity had been given to Xiao Chen. As for how much benefit he could get, it would depend on Xiao Chen's own ability. Although the Sky Thunder Realm was extremely extraordinary, it wasn't easy to withstand it. Heavenly lightning striking the body wasn't something that ordinary people could endure. Moreover, if one was careless, it was very likely that one would be seriously injured. It wouldn't be strange even if one was killed by the heavenly lightning. Everything depended on Xiao Chen's own ability. Leaving with Tianyu, Supreme Venerate Tianyun brought him all the way to the entrance of the Sky Domain's secret realm. Supreme Venerate Tianyun looked at Tianyu and said seriously, "The situation in the North Star boundary is about to change greatly. Now, the first holy son of the various major quasi-sage sects have entered seclusion in the place of heritage. When they come out of seclusion, their strength will definitely increase by leaps and bounds. Therefore, Tianyu, you can't fall behind. The great changes in the North Star realm were about to arrive. All the first saints had entered seclusion in their heritage grounds. All the quasi-sage sects in the North Star realm had their own heritage ground. Of course, the Sacred Palace didn't have one yet. After all, the Sacred Palace had been established for too short a time. In terms of heritage, it naturally couldn't be compared to the other 6 quasi-sage sections. Fortunately, Shao Chun had accidentally obtained the opportunity to enter the Sky Thunder realm this time. This could be considered as making up for the shortcomings of the Sacred Palace. Having arranged for Shao Chun to enter the Sky Thunder realm and Tianyu to enter the Sky Domain Secret Territory, Nine Heavens was obviously preparing for the upcoming upheaval. Tianyu smiled confidently. "Don't worry, Supreme Venerate. I won't fall behind anyone." "That's good. These are the divine abilities of the Sky Clan recorded in the Sky Emperor record, as well as the first law of the imprint cultivation method. Take them and cultivate them together in the Sky Domain Secret Territory," Supreme Venerate Tianyun said with a smile, then took out 2 jades and handed them to Tianyu. She specially selected a few divine abilities of the Sky race for Tianyu to cultivate. After giving a few more instructions, Tianyu entered the Sky Domain Secret Territory. Not knowing that Tianyu had entered the Sky Domain Secret Territory, Shao Chun had already entered the Sky Thunder realm through the entrance. The entire Sky Thunder realm was like the end of the world. The ground was scorched black, and not a single blade of grass grew. Thick black thunderclouds covered the sky, and streaks of lightning were faintly discernible in the black clouds. Just as Shao Chun entered the Sky Thunder realm, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky without any warning, ruthlessly striking Shao Chun. The strong electric current made Shao Chun feel numb. Fortunately, the lightning here wasn't irresistible. Without hesitation, Shao Chun sat down cross-legged and slowly rose into the air. Then, bolts of lightning fell from the sky, continuously striking Shao Chun. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1103. Closing his eyes, he floated in midair as bolts of lightning continuously bombarded Shao Chun's body. The power of these bolts of lightning was not weak. If it wasn't for Shao Chun's strong physical body, he obviously wouldn't be able to withstand it. He finally understood why no one in Nine Heavens was interested in such a heaven-defying secret realm. There weren't many people in the Sky race who cultivated their physical body. If one's physical body wasn't strong enough, not to mention using the Sky Thunder realm to cultivate, even withstanding the baptism of the lightning was difficult. It was precisely because of this that this Sky Thunder realm was an existence that no one cared about in Nine Heavens. However, although the Sky Thunder realm was of little value to the Sky race, to Shao Chun, it was definitely a supreme treasure, especially for the cultivation of the tempered battle body. It had only been a short 15 minutes since he entered the Sky Thunder realm, but Shao Chun could already feel the strengthening of his physical body. Although it was just a little bit, Shao Chun could clearly feel that his physical body was constantly being strengthened. Moreover, with the baptism of the lightning, the impurities in his body were also constantly being expelled from his body. At this moment, there were already drops of black liquid flowing out of Shao Chun's pores. Such a terrifying effect boosted Shao Chun's confidence in breaking through the 3rd level of the tempered body of 100 battles. However, although the effect was good, the feeling was really uncomfortable. With so many bolts of lightning striking his body without any gap, the feeling was really unbearable. Moreover, the most terrible thing was that with the continuous bombardment of the lightning, Shao Chun's body was almost completely numb. No wonder Supreme Venerable Tian Yun said that although the Sky Thunder realm was heaven-defying, how much benefits one could obtain still depended on one's own ability. Well, if one couldn't withstand the baptism of the lightning, then they naturally wouldn't obtain any benefit. However, this didn't exist for Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen could endure the pain. Therefore, facing the attacks of the lightning, Xiao Chen wasn't unhappy at all. On the contrary, he was a little excited. In Xiao Chen's opinion, as long as he could increase his strength, enduring a little pain was nothing at all, as long as it wasn't painful. Because of Xiao Chen's arrival, the heavenly thunder realm became extremely lively. Countless heavenly thunders seemed to have completely awakened as they continuously struck Xiao Chen's body. However, Xiao Chen was even more like a madman. Under the baptism of the heavenly thunder, the corner of his mouth actually revealed a hint of a smile. Xiao Chen and Tian Yu entered the Heaven Thunder World and the Heaven Domain Mystic Realm, respectively. Both of them were preparing for the great changes that were about to happen in the North Star boundary. The current situation in the North Star realm was pretty much clear. The Holy Palace, Nine Heavens, Liwang Sect, and Supreme Deity Sect were in a four-way alliance, while the Night Ghost Pavilion, Myriad Beast Valley, and Heavenly Demon Sect were in a three-way alliance. The 7 quasi-saint sects had formed 2 great alliances. With this, an unparalleled great battle that would engulf the entire North Star realm was clearly not far away. Similarly, this battle had also determined the situation and direction of the entire North Star realm. Unaware of what was happening in the outside world, Xiao Chen was completely immersed in his cultivation in the Heavenly Thunder World at this very moment. 3 days after Xiao Chen entered the Heavenly Thunder World, Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun left Nine Heavens and headed towards the Holy Palace. A small starship secretly left Nine Heavens with one of the 3 quasi-saint great sovereigns of Nine Heavens, Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun, sitting on it. Not only Supreme Sovereign Tian Yu, Supreme Deity Sect and Liwang Sect also each had a starship that set off on the same day and headed straight for the Holy Palace with quasi-saint great sovereigns sitting on it. Supreme Deity Sect had sent Supreme Sovereign Adam, who was already very familiar with the Holy Palace, while Liwang Sect had sent Supreme Sovereign Hegemon Peak, who had previously been in contact with the Holy Palace. The Sadatta Holy Sect had sent their quasi-saint great sovereigns to the Holy Palace to discuss the details of the alliance. At the same time, the Holy Palace had already made preparations for this 4-way meeting. This meeting was different from the past. In the past, everyone had only sent a few saints, and at most, it was only between the holy sons and holy daughters. But this time, it was a meeting between the quasi-saint great sovereigns of the 4 quasi-saint great sovereigns. As such, it was naturally extremely important. In the Holy Palace, the entire Holy Palace, including the heavenly Chen continent, was under martial law. Dozens of saint great sovereigns were assigned to various parts of the heavenly Chen continent, responsible for monitoring every movement. In addition, the Holy Palace had already made corresponding arrangements to welcome the quasi-saint great sovereigns of the 3 quasi-saint great sovereigns. Time passed day by day. 7 days later, Supreme Sovereign Hegemon Peak of the Liwang Sect was the first to arrive. Xiao Xing personally came out to welcome him and arranged accommodations for him. 10 days later, Supreme Sovereign Adam of the Supreme Deity Sect arrived. Similarly, Xiao Xing personally came out to welcome him. Half a month later, Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun of the Nine Heavens, who was the furthest away, arrived. As such, after half a month, the quasi-saint great sovereigns of the 4 quasi-saint great sovereigns of the 4 quasi-saint great sovereigns finally gathered. After a night's rest, the meeting was scheduled to take place the next day. The location of the meeting was naturally the main hall of the Holy Palace, the Sacred Hall. The Sacred Palace was extremely quiet that night. Many Sacred Palace disciples were very cautious, not daring to act rashly. It couldn't be helped. Now that the quasi-saint great sovereigns of the 4 quasi-saint great sovereigns had gathered in the Sacred Palace, anyone who dared to cause trouble during this special period would definitely be courting death. It wasn't just the Sacred Palace disciples. Even the people who came with Adam and the other two quasi-saint great sovereigns were incomparably low-key and quiet. They didn't even take a step out of the door. It couldn't be helped. The pressure from the meeting of the quasi-saint great sovereigns was too strong. It was no exaggeration to say that this meeting would determine the future structure of the North Star boundary. The night felt extremely long for everyone in the sacred palace. While many people were suffering, the first ray of sunlight finally spilled over the land. As the sunlight scattered, the sacred palace began to move like a giant beast that had just awakened. Half-saint elders constantly entered and exited the sacred hall, making the final preparations for the meeting of the quasi-saint great sovereigns. At this time, there were a total of 7 luxurious jade tables and chairs in the center of the sacred hall. The exquisite and translucent tables and chairs made it obvious at a glance that they were definitely of extraordinary value. At the same time, there were fine wine, spirit fruits, side dishes and so on the tables. Obviously, the sacred hall didn't want to be too boring while the quasi-saint great sovereigns were discussing. People continued to enter the sacred hall. It wasn't until 2 hours later that the sacred hall finally quieted down. All the half-saint elders had retreated, but a total of 20 sacred palace saint venerables stood guard around the sacred hall. The 20 saint venerables surrounded the entire sacred hall so tightly that not even a fly could pass through. With such a force, even a fly wouldn't be able to fly through. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 1104. 20 Saint Venerables stood guard around the sacred hall, which showed how much importance Shao Xing and the other 3 patriarchs attached to this 4-way meeting. Not only that, but there were also Saint Venerables standing guard around the sacred hall. Outside, there were also the 10 sacred halls led by Chun Ling, Long Qing and the other chosen. In particular, the entrance to the sacred region was heavily guarded and no one was allowed to approach. Everything was ready. The first to appear outside the sacred hall were the 4 patriarchs, Shao Xing, Mengjie, Binglian, and Dipankara. Not long after the 4 appeared, Supreme Sovereign Tianyun, Supreme Sovereign Adam, and Supreme Sovereign Hegemon Peak also arrived one after another. Behind them were some saints and elders of the 3 major sections. Everyone met outside the sacred hall and then walked in together. Of course, only 7 people were qualified to enter the sacred hall today. As for the others, including Supreme Sovereign Tianyun and the others, they could only wait outside the sacred hall. The 7 quasi-saint great sovereigns entered the sacred hall together and sat down according to their order. The 7 jade tables and chairs were arranged in a circular arrangement. There was no distinction between the main and secondary seat. This was normal. After all, everyone present was a quasi-saint great sovereign. If you said who was the main and who was the secondary seat, it would probably cause others to be dissatisfied. After taking their seats, Supreme Sovereign Tianyun and the others unconsciously looked at Binglian and Dipankara because they had never seen these 2 before. Sensing the 3's gaze, Shao Xing was the first to speak with a smile. Everyone, let me introduce them. These 2 are also the patriarchs of my sacred palace, Binglian and Dipankara. All along, the sacred palace had only revealed the strength of 2 quasi-saint great sovereigns to the outside world. But today, the sacred palace no longer held back. As a result, Binglian and Dipankara could naturally show up openly. Although Shao Xing said this casually, Supreme Venerate Tianyun and the others were a little surprised when they heard this. After all, although they had guessed that the sacred palace should have hidden some strength, they didn't expect that they would directly hide 2 quasi-saint great sovereigns. The significance of this was completely different. One had to know that 2 quasi-saint great sovereigns and 4 quasi-saint great sovereigns were completely different concepts. If the sacred palace only had 2 quasi-sage great venerates, then the other 6 quasi-sage sects like Ninth Heaven might not have taken the sacred palace seriously. After all, there were 2 quasi-sage great venerables who had just broken through to the quasi-sage realm. The other 6 quasi-sage sects were only a little afraid of them, but they weren't a threat. If they were determined to destroy the sacred palace, they could still do it. But things were different now. The sacred palace had 4 quasi-saint supreme sovereigns. Even if they had just entered the quasi-saint realm, their strength had already doubled. As a result, the threat of the sacred palace had greatly increased. At the very least, Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun and the others no longer dared to underestimate them. Slightly stunned, the 3 of them nodded at Ice Lotus and Randang as a form of greeting. When the 4-way alliance had just been formed, the sacred palace had already bared its fangs. The 2 quasi-saint great venerates had instantly raised the sacred palace's status in the hearts of Supreme Venerate Tian Yun and the others. Seeing the subtle changes in the eyes of the 3, Xiao Xing smiled slightly. This was the effect he wanted. Otherwise, if the sacred palace was looked down upon, it wouldn't be good for the alliance in the future. After a brief shock, Supreme Sovereign Adon said with a smile, "The sacred palace really likes to surprise people. The 4 quasi-saint supreme sovereigns have kept us in the dark for so long." Haha, Supreme Sovereign Adon must be joking. The sacred palace has just been established, so of course we have to take precautions, Xiao Xing said with a smile. After exchanging a few pleasantries, Supreme Sovereign Domineering Mountain said, "Well, let's talk about the alliance first. The Night Ghost Pavilion, Myriad Beast Valley, and Evil Sky Palace have also formed an alliance. It seems that the North Star boundary is indeed going to usher in a great war." The establishment of the 2 alliances was not only related to the 7 quasi-saint sections. It should be known that there were many subordinate forces under the 7 quasi-saint sections. It could be said that the establishment of the 2 alliances had forcibly divided all the forces in the North Star boundary into 2 lineup. Perhaps there used to be a layer of window paper between the various forces, but it was believed that this layer of window paper would soon be pierced through. Once this layer of window paper was gone, there would naturally be no need for the various forces to calculate anything between them, and the North Star boundary would be completely chaotic. Of course, this was also a process that needed to be experienced in order to reshuffle the card. Hearing Supreme Sovereign Domineering Mountain's words, everyone nodded slightly. Since they had formed an alliance, they naturally had to consider the division of benefit. Originally, if the Sacred Palace only had 2 quasi-saint supreme sovereigns, then the Sacred Palace would naturally obtain the least benefits in this war. However, now that the Sacred Palace had 4 quasi-saint supreme sovereigns, the division of benefits that they had previously thought of was no longer feasible. After all, the Sacred Palace's strength was no longer something that could be easily manipulated. Thinking of this, Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun and the others fell silent. Then, Supreme Sovereign Randang said with a smile, "Our Sacred Palace has some ideas that I would like to share with everyone." "Please speak, Supreme Sovereign Randang." Hearing this, Supreme Sovereign Aten smiled. "This time, our 4 forces will definitely have a battle with the Night Ghost Pavilion and the other 2 quasi-saint sections. If we lose, then there's no need to talk about anything else, because losing is equivalent to being destroyed. However, if we win, then how should we divide the benefits of the Night Ghost Pavilion and the other 2 forces? This is the end of our discussion. Our Sacred Palace's idea is that each of our 4 forces will take 20%, and the remaining 20% will be divided among the various forces under us," said Supreme Sovereign Randang slowly. In fact, the Sacred Palace's idea was very simple. They would divide the benefits equally. If they won this war, then each of the 4 forces would take 20% of the benefits, which would be 80% in total. As for the remaining 20%, it would be divided among the various forces under the 4 forces. In this way, the 4 forces would eat the meat, and the people under them could also drink the soup. It could be considered the fairest distribution plan. Originally, based on the Sacred Palace's strength, the Heavenly Saints sect, Ninth Heaven and Liwang sect would never agree to such a division, because the Sacred Palace would get the same amount as them. However, now that the Sacred Palace had displayed its true strength, the three forces had no choice but to carefully consider the matter. If they gave the Sacred Palace too little, then the Sacred Palace would definitely not agree. Instead of immediately agreeing, Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun and the others fell silent, as if they were really thinking about the gains and losses of such a division. The Sacred Palace fell silent and no one spoke. While pondering, they would occasionally raise their cups and take a sip of wine. It wasn't until about half an hour later that Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun of Ninth Heaven spoke first. Ninth Heaven agrees with the Sacred Palace's plan. This division is indeed the fairest, and I believe it will be the most convincing. Supreme Venerable Tian Yun was the first to agree. Hearing this, Supreme Venerable Yadun and Supreme Venerable Domineering Mountain looked at each other, and then both of them smiled helplessly. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 1105. Both Supreme Sovereign Adam and Supreme Sovereign Tyrant Peak smiled wryly. Since Ninth Heaven had already agreed to the Sacred Palace's objection, the two of them naturally had nothing more to say. Most importantly, as Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun had said, the Sacred Palace's objection was indeed the fairest and most convincing. There was basically no reason to object. Of course, the most important thing was the strength that the Sacred Palace had displayed. If the Sacred Palace still only had two quasi-saint great sovereigns, Shao Xing and Mengjia, Supreme Sovereign Adam and Supreme Sovereign Tyrant Peak would definitely not agree to such a plan. The reason was very simple. The Sacred Palace was too weak. How could they share the same benefits as the Supreme Divine Sect and the other two? Unfortunately, the strength that the Sacred Palace had displayed today was enough to split the benefits equally with the other three. Four quasi-saint great sovereigns were existences that no one could ignore. Only with strength did one have the right to speak. Everyone was very clear about this. After a wry smile, Supreme Sovereign Adam and Supreme Sovereign Tyrant Peak spoke one after another. My Supreme Divine Sect also agrees. The Liwang sect also agrees. All four sides expressed their agreement. In this way, the division of benefits after the battle was decided. Seeing this, Shao Xing and the other three all smiled. This was already the best result. After determining the division of benefits, the following matters were much simpler. While the quasi-sage great venerables were discussing, in the outside world, Long Qing and Chun Ling were standing on a mountain peak in the 10 great sacred halls, which were responsible for guarding the periphery of the sacred region. The sacred region's scenery was very beautiful, but at this moment, the two didn't pay much attention to it. Third brother has been in Ninth Heaven for more than a month, right? Yes, even Shui Rou and the others have been there for more than half a month. Long Qing nodded in response. Back then, the three siblings had separately gone to the Heavenly Saints sect, Liwang sect, and Ninth Heaven. Now that Chun Ling and Long Qing had returned, Shao Chen was still in Ninth Heaven. It wasn't that they were worried about Shao Chen's safety. It was just that after not seeing him for so long, Chun Ling and Long Qing couldn't help but miss him. Upon hearing Long Qing's words, Chun Ling sighed softly. After all, the Sacred Palace has just been established, and its foundation is still too weak. I heard that the first holy son of the other quasi-sage sects have already entered the secret realm, but the Sacred Palace doesn't have one. Sigh. The Sacred Palace's foundation was too weak. When the great battle was about to break out, quasi-sage sects like the 9 Heavens had already opened their secret realms, but the Sacred Palace hadn't. Although the Sacred Palace had already opened all cultivation mystic realms to the Chosens and Saintesses for free, these ordinary cultivation mystic realms were still lacking compared to the Foundation mystic realms. There's nothing we can do about it. However, if we can win this battle, we should be able to change the situation, said Long Qing. Without waiting for Chen Ling's reply, Long Qing looked at the sky and said, "That's right. When can we go back?" Long Qing and Chen Ling came from the same place. When they first came into contact with the North Star boundary, Xiao Chen had actually asked Chen Ling which continent his hometown was. Unfortunately, Chen Ling's hometown wasn't in the North Star boundary. The Northern Star boundary was already vast enough, but in Chen Ling's eyes, the Northern Star boundary was unable to represent this world because there was an even vaster world outside the Northern Star boundary, and that was where he and Long Qing's hometown was. Long Qing actually didn't have much of an impression of his hometown. Chen Ling said indifferently, "It's not time yet. The sacred palace isn't strong enough." The sacred palace wasn't strong enough. No one could guess what Chen Ling's words meant. Even Long Qing didn't understand, but he didn't ask any further. Since Chen Ling said so, he would just listen to him. "All right, let's not talk about this anymore. We definitely have to go back, but compared to my hometown, I'm more concerned about the sacred palace and my current life now," Chen Ling said with a faint smile. The four-way meeting lasted for 3 days. During these 3 days, the various quasi-saint great sovereigns of the 4 great quasi-saint sects discussed all the details of the alliance. Finally, at the end of the 3rd day, the various quasi-saint great sovereigns reached a complete consensus and swore a blood oath on the main square outside the sacred palace, officially announcing the establishment of the alliance. Only 5 days after the sacred palace and the other 3 quasi-saint sects announced the establishment of the alliance, the Night Ghost Pavilion, Myriad Beast Valley, Demonic Sky Hall and the other 2 quasi-saint sects also announced the establishment of their alliance. As a result, the 7 quasi-saint sects in the North Star boundary had truly formed 2 camps at this moment. The formation of these 2 camps also caused the situation in the North Star boundary to become increasingly tense. The numerous saint sects below even chose to take sides one after another. For a time, the clouds of war shrouded the entire North Star boundary. Everyone knew that an earth-shaking war that had never happened before was probably not far away. In a battle of such a scale, the saint sects were merely cannon fodder. Only the 7 quasi-saint sects could truly play the role of the main characters. Only they could influence the direction of the entire situation. Completely unaware of what was happening in the outside world, time seemed to have stopped in the Sky Thunder boundary. Xiao Chen was constantly being attacked by heavenly lightning. 2 months had passed since he entered the Sky Thunder boundary. At this moment, Xiao Chen's entire body was covered by a layer of black membrane. This membrane was the impurities in Xiao Chen's body that had been cleansed during the process of the heavenly lightning striking the body and then attached to Xiao Chen's skin. The impurities were constantly being removed. At the same time, Xiao Chen's physical strength was also steadily increasing. The 100-tempered battle body had already reached the limit of the 2nd level, the Jade Organs stage. Now that he had endured the heavenly lightning striking the body for 2 months in the Sky Thunder boundary, Xiao Chen's 100-tempered battle body had reached the critical point of a breakthrough. The breakthrough was in the next few days. Xiao Chen gritted his teeth and persevered. Another 3 days passed. On this day, a muffled sound came from Xiao Chen's body. Then, the black membrane around his body was directly obliterated. As the black membrane disappeared, a body that looked like a newborn baby appeared in the sky. The 100-tempered battle body had finally broken through and reached the 3rd level of the heavenly body stage. After breaking through to the heavenly body stage, Xiao Chen's physical strength had obviously undergone a qualitative change. Although from the outside, Xiao Chen's body didn't seem to have changed much. However, it was more delicate, and the lines of his muscles were more obvious. It was as if they had been carved out with a knife. His body wasn't considered burly, but the lines were smooth, giving people a feeling that it was filled with explosive power. begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 1106. After cultivating in the Sky Thunder realm for more than 2 months, Xiao Chen's tempered battle physique finally broke through to the 3rd level of the heavenly body realm. The terrifying power of the tempered battle physique that had reached the heavenly body realm shocked Xiao Chen. It seemed like it was only a step away from a breakthrough, but compared to the 2nd level of the Jade Organs realm, the heavenly body realm was much, much stronger. When the punch was thrown, the space rippled like the surface of water. Xiao Chen did not use any spiritual power in this punch. He only used his physical strength. He could not help but smile. The breakthrough of the tempered battle physique had allowed Xiao Chen's strength to rise by a level. If it was said that he could only contend with the other first saints before, then now, Xiao Chen did not fear the other first saints in the North Star realm at all. In just a few years, Xiao Chen had caught up and successfully caught up with the other first saints who had been famous in the North Star realm for many years. If it was in the past, no one would have imagined such a thing. Just as Xiao Chen was secretly rejoicing because of the successful breakthrough of the tempered battle physique, Xiao Chen suddenly felt his cultivation begin to stir without any warning. My cultivation is about to break through as well? He could not help but be overjoyed. Originally, he only planned to break through the tempered battle physique, but who would have thought that he would have a double blessing? Even his cultivation would break through at this time. This was all thanks to the heavenly lightning in the Sky Thunder realm. Although it was extremely painful when the heavenly lightning struck his body, the pure energy contained within the heavenly lightning cleansed Xiao Chen's body from the inside out. With all the impurities removed, the breakthrough in his cultivation naturally came naturally. He sat down cross-legged, and he practically didn't expend any strength. It was very easy for him to charge through the barrier to the advanced stage of the Tao Emperor realm, and his cultivation climbed up to the advanced stage of the Tao Emperor realm. The double breakthrough of the tempered battle physique and cultivation made Xiao Chen overjoyed. After that, Xiao Chen used another 3 days to stabilize his cultivation and tempered battle body. Only then did he leave the Sky Thunder world. Crushing the token that Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun had given him, Xiao Chen's figure instantly disappeared from the Sky Thunder realm and appeared in 9th heaven in the blink of an eye. After more than 2 months, Xiao Chen finally left the Sky Thunder world. Just as Xiao Chen appeared at the entrance of the Sky Thunder world, one of the saints from the 9 Heavens Hall in charge of guarding the Sky Thunder world appeared before Xiao Chen and spoke indifferently. The great sage has instructed you to leave on your own after leaving the Sky Thunder realm. Upon hearing the saint's words, Xiao Chen did not say anything else. He nodded and then left. Although Xiao Chen still wanted to enter the Sky Thunder world again, after all, it was indeed very beneficial to his cultivation. Xiao Chen also knew that one should not be too greedy. Supreme Sovereign Tian Yun had already thanked him by allowing him to enter the Sky Thunder world once. Therefore, even though he was reluctant to leave the Sky Thunder world, Xiao Chen did not hesitate and directly left this place, rushing towards the courtyard where Qin Shuru and the other 2 stayed. Since he did not leave, Qin Shuru and the other 2 naturally waited in 9th heaven. When Xiao Chen returned to the courtyard, Qin Shuru and the other 2 who had rushed over secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Looks like my husband's harvest in these 2 months is not small. Looking at the smile on Xiao Chen's face, 100 Flower Fairy smiled gently. Hearing 100 Flower Fairy's words, Xiao Chen also laughed heartily. Haha, my harvest is indeed not small. It can be said that 2 blessings came at the same time. In front of the 3 women, Xiao Chen did not need to hide anything at all. He very openly expressed the joy in his heart. The breakthrough in both the 100 tempered battle body and cultivation was naturally something to be happy about. Seeing Xiao Chen's expression, Qin Shuru also laughed softly. Then congratulations, my husband. Haha, come, let's talk inside. With a smile, Xiao Chun pulled the 3 women and the 4 of them entered the front hall. After taking a seat, Xiao Chun first asked Xiao Chun about what had happened in the 2 months he had been in seclusion. Regarding this, the 3 women naturally did not hold back and told Xiao Chun everything. First, the most important thing was naturally the establishment of the 2 great alliances. Secondly, the situation in the North Star world had become increasingly tense due to the establishment of the 2 great alliances. Currently, the alliance formed by the Sacred Palace, 9 Heavens, Supreme Deity Sect, and Liwang Sect, and the alliance formed by the Night Ghost Pavilion, Evil Sky Palace, and Myriad Beast Valley had already clashed many times. Although the scale of the clashes was not large, and there were no saints or quasi-saint supreme sovereigns involved, from the various signs, it was clear that a war between the 2 great alliances was inevitable. Xiao Chun did not find the establishment of the 2 great alliances strange. This was something that was destined to happen. Afterwards, Xiao Chun asked about Wen Tianyue's situation. He did not know that Tianyue had entered the Sky Domain's secret realm. It was Qin Shuru and the other 2 women who told Xiao Chun. However, Tianyue had come out of seclusion 3 days earlier than Xiao Chun. She had even come to find Xiao Chun yesterday, and left after learning that Xiao Chun was still in the Sky Thunder world. Speaking of Tianyue, the 3 women's eyes flashed with a strange light. In fact, Tianyue's visit yesterday was not as simple as the 3 women had described. Tianyue had indeed come to find Xiao Chun. However, after learning that Xiao Chun had yet to come out of seclusion, Tianyue did not leave. Instead, she chatted with Qin Shuru and the other 2 women for a long time. As for what they talked about, outsiders did not know. Only the 4 women knew. After the establishment of the Sky Great Alliance, there was constant friction between them, and the situation in the North Star world was becoming increasingly tense. Tianyue had also come out of seclusion 3 days ago. This was what had happened while Xiao Chun was in seclusion. It could be said that in these 2 short months, the situation in the North Star world had completely changed. After a moment of silence, Xiao Chun finally said, "In that case, we should also prepare to return to the Sacred Palace. Let's leave tomorrow." They had stayed in the 9 Heavens for a long time, and it was time to leave. However, after hearing Xiao Chun's words, Gu Lingyao revealed a bright smile. "Big brother Xiao Chun, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave for the time being." Why?" Xiao Chun asked in confusion after hearing Gu Lingyao's words. "Someone is waiting for you. The first holy son of the Liwang sect, Tong Huang, is here." Gu Lingyao smiled. Tong Huang came to the 9 Heavens? Hearing this, Xiao Chun was stunned at first, but he quickly guessed something. He looked at the 3 women and said with a strange expression, "Tong Huang is here because of the Sky Thunder Realm?" "Yes, I don't know where this Tong Huang heard that my husband had entered the Sky Thunder Realm. Half a month ago, he angrily came over and insisted on an explanation from the 9 Heavens. It seems that he is quite angry." 100 Flower Fairy smiled. "Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." End of chapter. Chapter 1107. As expected, he was here for the Sky Thunder Realm. Hearing 100 Flower Fairy's words, Xiao Chun couldn't help but laugh. Seeing this, Qin Shuru helplessly said, "Husband, this Tong Huang is obviously holding back a bellyful of anger. He will definitely come to find trouble with you. Why are you still laughing?" "Haha, of course I know that. But when I think of Tong Huang, I can't help it. Haha." Hearing this, Xiao Chun simply laughed out loud. Previously, when he found out how important the Sky Thunder Realm was to the Liwang sect, Xiao Chun had already guessed what kind of expression Tong Huang would have if he found out that he had entered the Sky Thunder Realm. Now, his guess had really come true. Regardless of where this Tong Huang had gotten the news from, Just the fact that he had traveled thousands of miles to come to the 9 heavens showed how much jealousy he had in his heart. Thinking about it, regarding the Sky Thunder Realm, the Liwang sect had discussed with the 9 heavens many times. They were willing to pay a huge price in exchange for the Sky Thunder Realm. But unfortunately, the 9 heavens had never agreed. Even if they couldn't get the Sky Thunder Realm, the Liwang sect didn't give up. Following that, they discussed with the 9 heavens to let the Liwang sect members enter the Sky Thunder Realm to cultivate. They would also give the same conditions as the exchange. But unfortunately, the 9 heavens still didn't agree. The Sky Thunder Realm was something that everyone in the Liwang sect yearned to enter and cultivate. But in the end, the first person to enter was actually Xiao Chen. This naturally made the Liwang sect's first holy son Tong Huang unable to accept it. The Liwang sect had offered such a huge price, but the 9 heavens didn't agree. But in the end, they let Xiao Chen enter the Sky Thunder Realm for free. It could be said that they were giving Xiao Chen an opportunity. Tong Huang was burning with jealousy. Xiao Chen couldn't help but laugh out loud. After more than 2 months of closed-door training, Xiao Chen didn't fear Tong Huang at all. Even if Tong Huang really came to find trouble with him, Xiao Chen was not afraid. If they really fought, it was hard to say who would win. Just as Xiao Chen was laughing out loud, an angry roar suddenly came from outside the courtyard. "Xiao Chen, come out. I know you're here." This roar was filled with anger, but in addition, there was also a hint of envy. They were extremely angry at Xiao Chen, but they were also extremely envious of him. Needless to say, the person who had come was naturally Tong Huang. Who would have thought that this guy would come knocking on their door so quickly? It seemed like he had been paying attention to the situation in the Sky Thunder Realm all this while. Hearing this angry roar, Xiao Chen smiled and looked at Qin Shuru and the other 2 girls. Then, he stood up and walked towards the courtyard door. The 3 girls followed closely behind Xiao Chen. When he opened the courtyard door, he saw an angry Tong Huang. He was still burly, but this time, Tong Huang looked like a little wife who had been wronged. He looked at Xiao Chen with an indescribable expression. There was anger, jealousy, and envy. All kinds of expressions mixed together, making Tong Huang's expression extremely interesting. Facing the angry Tong Huang, Xiao Chen wasn't nervous at all. He took the initiative to speak first. "Holy Son Tong Huang, why have you come to the 9 heavens? Haha, it's rare for us to meet. Come, let's drink to our heart's content today." Xiao Chen appeared to be very enthusiastic, as if he didn't notice Tong Huang's anger at all. At the same time, Xiao Chen grabbed Tong Huang's right arm and forcefully dragged him into the courtyard. Originally, he was here to cause trouble for Xiao Chen. Who would have thought that Xiao Chen would be so enthusiastic? Being forcefully pulled by Xiao Chen, Tong Huang was a little dazed. However, he quickly regained his senses and glared at Xiao Chen. "Xiao Chen, let go of me. I'm here to cause trouble for you. I'm here to fight with you." Tong Huang shouted angrily, but Xiao Chen completely ignored him. He pulled Tong Huang all the way to the backyard, then asked Qin Shuru and the other 2 girls to prepare the wine and dishes. In the backyard's bamboo pavilion, Xiao Chen ignored Tong Huang's angry shouts and pressed him down on a chair. Then, he sat down beside Tong Huang and poured wine for Tong Huang. "Holy son of the Tong Emperor, what are you doing? Even if you want to fight, you should wait until we're done drinking. Back in the BMO continent, you left before we even had a chance to drink. Today we're going to drink to our heart's content." As he spoke, Xiao Chen took the lead and raised his cup. He raised his head and downed it. Seeing this, although Tong Huang was furious, he did not refuse and downed his cup as well. Tong Huang was indeed a straightforward person. However, he was obviously not Xiao Chen's opponent at the wine table. After a few cups of wine, the jealousy in Tong Huang's heart had mostly dissipated. In the end, he even began to chat with Xiao Chen and poured out his grievances. He came to find Xiao Chen angrily, but who would have thought that Xiao Chen would force him to sit down and drink? After a few cups of wine, Tong Huang's anger quickly dissipated. He and Xiao Chen were like good brothers. Sitting nearby, Qin Shuru and the other two girls couldn't help but cover their mouths and chuckle when they saw Tong Huang's sorrowful face telling Xiao Chen about the pain in his heart. Gu Lingyao couldn't help but comment. This person is so stupid. He didn't even see through brother Xiao Chen's plan. Xiao Chen had never intended to fight Emperor Tong in the first place. Since there was no objection at all, he forced Emperor Tong to sit down and drink with him. Emperor Tong was a straightforward person, and he was not scheming at all. As he drank, the anger in his heart dissipated. Originally, this battle was easily resolved by Xiao Chen. Of course, this was also because it was Tong Huang. If it was someone else, it would not have been so easy to fool them. Drinking cup after cup, Tong Huang said to Xiao Chen with an aggrieved expression, "Brother Xiao Chen, do you know how long I've wanted to enter the Sky Thunder Realm? In order to be able to enter the Sky Thunder Realm to cultivate, I've come to 9 heavens dozens of times. The price I offered was higher and higher, but 9 heavens just wouldn't agree. Brother Xiao Chen, my heart is bitter. What do you think 9 heavens is trying to do? The Sky Thunder Realm is just for show. The Sky Thunder Realm doesn't even train their bodies. Why don't they let us barbarians cultivate? This way, it's a win-win situation for everyone." As he drank, Tong Huang kept complaining. Looking at his appearance, Xiao Chen could not help but laugh. The dignified Li Wang sect's number 1 holy son actually had the time to complain. Indeed, the Tong Emperor yearned for the heavenly Thunder Realm too much. After drinking for an entire night, the Tong Emperor was completely drunk. This was also because he did not use his own spiritual energy to dispel the effects of the alcohol. Otherwise, he would definitely not be drunk. Of course, the Tong Emperor was also bent on getting drunk today. Feeling sad, he fell asleep immediately. In his sleep, Tong Huang mumbled, "Burp, Brother Xiao Chen, do you know? I heard that when you entered the Sky Thunder Realm, you felt as if your woman was in another man's bed. Do you know, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." End of chapter. Chapter 1108. Tong Huang was already drunk to the point of unconsciousness, but he was still complaining. Hearing his complaints, Xiao Chen's face was filled with black lines. This guy was comparing the Sky Thunder Realm to his own woman. Smiling bitterly, Xiao Chen called for 2 servants to help Tong Huang into the guest room. These 2 servants were specially hired by 9 heavens to take care of him and Qin Shuru. After Tong Huang left, Xiao Chen also returned to his room. Qin Shuru and the other 2 girls were still waiting for him. As soon as she entered the room, Gu Lingyao said with a smile, "Big brother Xiao Chen, you are really something. However, that Tong Huang is really too stupid. You little girl, Tong Huang's personality is a little too straightforward. Furthermore, this matter is not my fault. There is no enmity between us, so we can sit down and drink together. Do you really think he is a fool?" Xiao Chen scolded with a smile when he heard Gu Lingyao's words. Tong Huang's personality was straightforward, but he was definitely not a fool. It would be strange if a fool like him could become the first holy son of the Li Wang sect. The reason was as Xiao Chen had said. This matter was not his fault. Tong Huang also understood that the reason he came back today was because of jealousy in his heart. Shaking his head with a bitter smile, Xiao Chen thought of the words Tong Huang said when he was drunk. What did he mean by "it is like his woman's bed"? Only Tong Huang dared to say such things. Tong Huang's matter was easily settled. The next morning, when Tong Huang woke up, Xiao Chen was already cultivating in the courtyard. Seeing Tong Huang walk over, Xiao Chen sheathed his sword and smiled. "Brother Tong Huang, you must have drunk too much yesterday. Haha, I've embarrassed myself in front of Brother Xiao. Upon hearing this, Tong Huang smiled embarrassedly. His appearance gave off a simple and honest feeling. After interacting with Tong Huang yesterday, Xiao Chen did not have any hatred towards him. On the contrary, he felt that this person was not bad and should be someone worth befriending. Therefore, Xiao Chen planned to help Tong Huang this time, so he said this with a smile. Brother Tong Huang, I thought about it last night. It is not impossible for you to enter the Sky Thunder Realm. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, Tong Huang was overjoyed. He stepped forward and grabbed Xiao Chen's arms. He said excitedly, Really? Brother Xiao didn't lie to me? Of course not. However, Brother Tong Huang, can you let go of me first? Xiao Chen smiled helplessly. Only after hearing Xiao Chen's words did Tong Huang let go of Xiao Chen. However, his large eyes were still locked onto Xiao Chen with anticipation. Facing Tong Huang's gaze, Xiao Chen said with a smile. Actually, I feel that if Brother Tong Huang wants to enter the Sky Thunder Realm, it should be better to find the Sky Moon Saintess. As long as you can convince the Sky Moon Saintess and Brother Tong Huang is willing to pay a price, I believe that the 9 heavens should not refuse. Starting with Tian Yu was indeed a good idea. Moreover, Xiao Chen still had some confidence in convincing Tian Yu. As long as he could get Tian Yu to speak occasionally, the quasi-saints of the 9 heavens would not say anything. Sky Moon Saintess? That is a good idea. However, Brother Xiao, the Sky Moon Saintess and I. After hearing Xiao Chen's words, Tong Huang pondered for a moment. He also felt that it was feasible. However, he also had no confidence in convincing the Sky Moon Saintess. Seeing Tong Huang's hesitant look, Xiao Chen naturally knew what he wanted to say. He immediately smiled and said, Brother Tong Huang, I will go with you. I believe that with the two of us, the chances of success will be higher. Tong Huang originally wanted to rope in Xiao Chen. After all, Xiao Chen was the #1 holy son of the sacred palace. With 2 of the #1 holy sons stepping forward, the chances of persuading Tian Yu would naturally be much higher. Seeing that Xiao Chen had agreed to go with them, Tong Huang immediately beamed with joy. Then, Xiao Chen informed Qin Shuru and the other 2 girls and left with Tong Huang. They walked all the way to Tian Yu's cave dwelling, where Xiao Chen and Tong Huang met Tian Yu. During the past 2 months, Tian Yu had also gained a lot in the Sky Domain secret realm. When she saw Xiao Chen, a trace of shyness flashed across her face. However, it was only for a moment and Xiao Chen did not notice. After the 3 of them took a seat, it was still Xiao Chen who told Tian Yu the reason for their visit. Tian Yu turned to Tong Huang and said, Holy Son Tong Huang wants to enter the Sky Thunder Realm. What price can I pay? Tian Yu did not directly refuse. Tong Huang was overjoyed and began to discuss with Tian Yu. As for Xiao Chen, he sat beside the 2 of them and did not have much room to interrupt. In the end, after some bargaining, Tian Yu agreed to Tong Huang's request. However, the specific details still needed to be decided by the great sovereigns. There were 2 reasons why Tian Yu agreed to Tong Huang's request. One was naturally because of Xiao Chen, and the other was because of the current relationship between the 9 heavens and the Liwang sect. Both sides had already formed an alliance, and there were some things that could not be overdone. After receiving Tian Yu's approval, Tong Huang was naturally happy. In the next few days, Tong Huang, Tian Yu, and Xiao Chen often gathered together. Of course, Qin Shuru and the other 2 ladies were also there. However, what Xiao Chen found strange was that the 3 ladies actually got along well with Tian Yu. Most of the time, it was him and Tong Huang drinking while the 4 ladies gathered together and whispered to each other. Sometimes, Xiao Chen wanted to join in but was rejected by the 4 ladies. He really did not know what the 4 ladies were doing. 5 days passed in a row. On this day, Tian Yu finally convinced Great Sovereign Tian Yun to agree to let Tong Huang enter the Sky Thunder Realm. After receiving this news, Tong Huang was naturally excited and entered the Sky Thunder Realm on the same day without delay. Tong Huang was able to enter the Sky Thunder Realm as he wished. However, to be honest, because Shao Chun had already entered the Sky Thunder Realm, the power of the Sky Thunder Realm was a lot less. The effect of Tong Huang's cultivation inside would definitely not be as good as Shao Chen's. Even so, Tong Huang was still extremely excited. After settling the matter with Tong Huang, Shao Chen was also preparing to leave the Nine Heavens. However, who would have thought that Tian Yu would also want to follow along and take a look at the sacred palace? Regarding this, although Shao Chen was puzzled, he did not say much. After all, the great sovereigns of the Nine Heavens did not say anything. What could Shao Chen do? Left with no choice, the group could only bring Tian Yu along and leave the Nine Heavens, heading towards the sacred palace. The starship traveled through the starry sky. At first, nothing happened, but on the third day, Shao Chun suddenly received a message from the sacred palace. Moreover, it was a message personally sent by Shao Xing. The content of the message was very simple, with only one order. The Night Ghost Pavilion has launched a sneak attack on the 100 Mo continent's spirit vein. Head there immediately. It would be best if you can kill the people from the Night Ghost Pavilion. If you can't, perhaps you can protect the spirit vein. It was a simple order, but Shao Chun had no choice but to change his destination and rush towards the 100 Mo continent. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 1109. The Night Ghost Pavilion had launched a sneak attack on the supreme-grade spirit vein on the Bai Mo continent. Shao Chun was naturally familiar with this supreme-grade spirit vein because Shao Chun had personally snatched it from the Liwang sect. Ever since the establishment of the two alliances, sneak attacks and small-scale conflicts like this were not rare. It could even be said that it was a common occurrence. Not only would the Night Ghost Pavilion launch sneak attacks on various properties under the Sacred Palace, but the Sacred Palace would also send people to attack the Night Ghost Pavilion's properties and spirit veins. This was a common occurrence. In addition to himself, Qin Shuru, and the other three girls, Shao Chun also had two saints with him. This wasn't a weak force, but Shao Chun didn't dare to be careless. If it was in the past, the 7 quasi-saint sects might still consider some face. But now, their face was almost completely torn apart, so this face was naturally no longer useful. He didn't know how strong the people the Night Ghost Pavilion had sent to attack the Bai Mo continent's spirit vein, but Shao Chun didn't dare to underestimate the enemy because the slightest carelessness could lead to him being surrounded and killed. Both the Night Ghost Pavilion and the Sacred Palace would be very willing to kill the first saint. Therefore, Shao Chun didn't let his guard down at all. Of course, Shao Xing had also told Shao Chun that if he encountered any danger, he could choose to retreat. There was no need to fight to the death with the Night Ghost Pavilion. What is the Night Ghost Pavilion's goal in attacking the Bai Mo continent's spirit vein? To take that spirit vein? But the Bai Mo continent is human territory. So what if the Night Ghost Pavilion takes it? It's destined that they won't be able to withstand it, Shao Chun said doubtfully as everyone sat together in the starship. Everyone living on the Bai Mo continent was human. Even if there were some other races, they were only a small part of the population. In this way, what was the Night Ghost Pavilion's goal in attacking the Bai Mo continent's spirit vein? Even if the spirit vein was taken, it definitely wouldn't be able to be defended. Upon hearing Shao Chen's words, Gu Lingyao said, "Could it be that they're trying to lure us into a trap? Are they deliberately luring the Sacred Palace's people to rescue them so they can surround and kill them in one fell swoop?" "That's possible, but no matter what, we still have to go take a look." Shao Chen nodded slightly. Gu Lingyao's words were very likely, but even so, they still had to go take a look. Moreover, Xiao Chen inadvertently glanced at Tianyue. Tianyue, the first holy girl, was with them. This was something the Night Ghost Pavilion definitely hadn't expected. If the Night Ghost Pavilion's forces but if the Night Ghost Pavilion's forces reinforcements were too strong. But if the Night Ghost Pavilion's sent too. In truth, the Night Ghost Pavilion's move seemed to put Xiao Chen's group in a difficult position, but it was also very dangerous for the Night Ghost Pavilion. If the Night Ghost Pavilion wanted to use the spirit vein of the Biamo continent as bait to kill the Sacred Palace experts who'd come to rescue them, it was a very good plan. But if the Sacred Palace's people were too strong, or if the Sacred Palace sensed something, then the Night Ghost Pavilion experts would have nowhere to run. After all, they were already deep in enemy territory, and it would be very difficult for them to receive any reinforcements. Xiao Chen's group wasn't far from the Biamo continent, which was probably why Xiao Xing had sent them a message. 3 days later, Xiao Chen's spaceship landed in Bimo Xingzong. A Bimo Xingzong elder came to welcome them. From him, Xiao Chen learned that the Bimo Xingzong sect master had already led a group of Bimo Xingzong experts to the front lines to fend off the Night Ghost Pavilion's attack. According to the news from the Bimo Xingzong sect master, the attack this time wasn't from the Night Ghost Pavilion, but from a saint sect under the Night Ghost Pavilion called the Ghost King sect. They were led by a saint expert, hundreds of disciples, and almost 100 elders. At the moment, the Bimo Xingzong sect master was leading people to fight fiercely with them. For now, the spirit vein was still in the hands of the human race. The Night Ghost Pavilion wasn't attacking personally. Xiao Chen fell silent when he heard this. The Ghost King sect? A mere saint-level sect dared to venture deep into the territory of the human race? Did they have a death wish? He didn't believe that the Ghost King sect alone had such courage. Xiao Chen couldn't help but hesitate. There was probably an even more powerful existence behind the Ghost King sect, right? Perhaps it was just as he thought. The Night Ghost Pavilion was doing this to kill the experts from the Saint Palace who were coming to rescue them. Thinking of this, Xiao Chen looked at the Bimo Xingzong elder and said, "Previously, the great sage told me that Bimo Xingzong is building the Trans-Realm Transportation Formation. Is it done yet?" Xiao Xing had previously told Xiao Chen that Trans-Realm Transportation Formations were being built on many of the continents that the Saint Palace had taken over. This was to make it easier for them to come to each other's aid. When he heard Xiao Chen's words, the elder replied, "Reporting to the saint, the Trans-Realm Transportation Formation is still being built. It should be completed in the next few days." The Trans-Realm Transportation Formation was about to be completed. This was good news for Xiao Chen. This way, if anything happened on the Biamo continent, the Saint Palace would be able to send reinforcements immediately. With the Trans-Realm Transportation Formation, Xiao Chen wouldn't have to fear the Night Ghost Pavilion's attack. Even if the Night Ghost Pavilion had already planned to surround and kill him, as long as the Trans-Realm Transportation Formation existed, the experts from the Saint Palace would quickly arrive and kill the people from the Night Ghost Pavilion and the Ghost King sect. Of course, he still couldn't be sure if this was the Night Ghost Pavilion's plan or if it was just the Ghost King sect's own idea. If it was the latter, then the Ghost King sect was definitely courting death. If it was the experts, then the Ghost King sect was just bait. After some thought, Xiao Chen finally decided to head to the spirit vein to take a look at the situation. At the same time, he instructed the elder to complete the Trans-Realm Transportation Formation as soon as possible and to inform him as soon as it was completed. After giving his instructions, Xiao Chen led everyone to the spirit vein on the same day. At the same time, in a city 100 kilometers east of the spirit vein, the Ghost King sect had already taken over the city. The Ghost King sect was using this city as a fulcrum to continuously attack the spirit vein. It was called Vast Peak City. It was not a big city. At this moment, the City Lord's mansion of vast Peak City had become the encampment of the Ghost King sect. However, at this moment, in the main hall of the City Lord's mansion, the leader of the Ghost King sect stood respectfully below. In front of him, a saint of the Night Ghost Pavilion sat on a high seat. As expected, there was an expert from the Night Ghost Pavilion present. However, the experts from the Night Ghost Pavilion had never appeared during the fierce battle. All this time, it had been the Ghost King sect and Baimo Xingzong fighting fiercely. Therefore, the Baimo Xingzong sect master naturally didn't know of the Night Ghost Pavilion's existence. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.